6:22 to play, third period.
Well, another one for Jake Neighbours in this game, in his 9th now of the season. He's closing in on 10 goals curves, and we're only a quarter way through the year. He got the promotion to get up to this top line a few games ago, and he's been nothing less than spectacular in all of them.
Yeah, he's done it his whole life. You know, it's just not camping out front of the nets, knowing when to get there, knowing when to take the goalie's eyes away, which he did in my shot tonight. It was a great screen by him, but timing too. Timing how to turn and find the rebound, and you know, it's just not camping out. It's a skill that he obviously has, but more than that too, I think he's like I said, he's winning his battles. He's skating hard. He's taking D-man wide. He's protecting the puck. So you know, he's been our best player as of late.
That, of course, is Braden Shen. That also was the audio from last night where the Blues took down the Buffalo Sabres 6-4. Welcome, everyone, into BK and Ferrario alongside Tanner Hendrickson and Grant Francis. I'm Alex Ferrario as we are live at the Centene Community Ice Center at our E&B Granite Studios where the Blues are practicing prior to hopping on a plane and headed back out onto the road. Last night, though, Jake Neighbours, one of many stars in that game for the Blues. Jordan Kyrou was one of them. Braden Shen was one of them. Jordan Binnington was another one. We'll talk about all of those throughout the day today. But we start with Jake Neighbours, T-Bone, who scored his 9th goal of the season last night. This guy now leads the Blues team in goals for the season. He overtook Pavel Buchnevich and Robert Thomas. No coincidence, he's playing on the line with those two guys. But on top of it, he's now got a 28.1 shooting percentage, which is 10th best in the National Hockey League. And to put this into perspective, he's got 32 shots on goal on the season. Right up there with him of the Arizona Coyotes is Michael Carcone, another guy who's got a 32 percentage, 10 shots on goal in 10 goals with 31 shots on goal. He is one of the people that the NHL has labeled a star on the rise. And that is exactly how you have to label Jake Neighbours. He not only is able to dictate the game with his physicality, he's able to dictate the game with his hockey sense, but now he's doing it in the shape of a unicorn. And we all love unicorns, T-Bone. They're the mystical creatures.
Fantastic.
Who doesn't love a horse with a horn on his head? I said this on postgame last night, and I talked about it with Joe Vitale. He is the modern-day power forward in the NHL. The 9 goals that he has scored this season, according to NHL Edge, that analytics website that they have, all 9 of his goals have come between the face-off dot and the goal crease. That is the kitchen for power forwards in the National Hockey League. The Matthew Tkachuks, the Brady Tkachuks, the Tom Wilsons. Jake Neighbours is making that his home. And it is so difficult to find power forwards in the National Hockey League today that are willing to take those bumps and bruises, score those types of goals, and not just score them, but have continued success with them. I know it's still early in his career. I know he hasn't even hit 82 games yet in his NHL career. But the Blues are making a power forward right now, and this is a power forward who is nowhere near his prime. And to me, this is a massive benefit for the Blues near future, having somebody who's established as a power forward.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you, because look at what they wanted from anybody on this team the last, 2-3 years. What if I feel like I've heard Craig Berube say in every post-game presser in that time frame, we need to go to the front of the net. Yep. We need to go to the front of the net. We've got to go to the dirty areas and score goals. You know who does that very, very well? Jake Neighbours. And I thought it was great. Not just him scoring when his dad was being interviewed on Valley Sports Midwest, but they asked him, hey, break down this goal. And what did he say? He went to the front of the net where they want him to go. Jake Neighbours has embodied what Craig Berube is telling him. You know, Jamie says it all the time. Craig Berube gives you the test with the answers on it. Can you just follow what is being said, and you're going to play? You're going to have success here in the Blues system. Jake Neighbours is doing that. You're right. He is the modern-day power forward. He's playing great hockey right now, and he's a guy that, we've talked about it, can be kind of that Swiss Army knife. He kind of feels like, I don't want to say he's not here yet, but he is starting to kind of trend towards this, of being the guy that, hey, you need to get a line going, put him on that line. Why? Not because he's got the best shot in the world, but because he's going to go to the dirty areas, and he's going to help that line out when they need it to get to the front of the net. So I've been so impressed with Jake Neighbours so far this year. I think if Craig Berube could go into a laboratory and construct the perfect hockey player, Jake Neighbours would walk out of that laboratory because he doesn't have the best shot, but he's going and doing what needs to be done to score goals.
Everybody remembers all of the hype around this past year's draft and wondering where the Blues were going to select and who they were going to select. And we had a lot of conversations about finding a way to get Ryan Leonard because Ryan Leonard is a power forward. Ryan Leonard's a guy that everybody wanted. Well, Ryan Leonard just got drafted 7th overall by the Washington Capitals. That's the player that Ryan Leonard is what Jake Neighbours is now. And that's the part that is so crucial and why when Craig Berube said this guy's going to be a massive piece of our future, it's because of that. You don't find power forwards in the National Hockey League. I want to play a cut from Joe Vitale because I heard him talking about it earlier today on the opening drive with Randy Carricker, Brooke Grimsley, and Kerry Davis. And Kerry asked Joe what he thinks the ceiling, the projections are for a Jake Neighbours. Take a listen.
I think that one day he's going to be a 35, 40 goal scorer. I really mean that because, he comes in with so many tools in the National Hockey League. He was a point-munching guy in junior. He's got a great knack for the net. He's got really quick hands. And he understands, one thing about this game that has not changed is that if you want to have success, if you want to have offensive success, you got to get to the front of the net.
By no way, shape, or form am I comparing this player to the two guys I'm going to bring up right now because, frankly, they're night and day better than Jake Neighbours. It's where they were drafted that will tell you that. But both Tkachuk boys, if you look at the way that their careers started, very similar to Jake Neighbours. So Matthew Tkachuk's first season with Calgary, 13 goals and 48 points in 76 games. Now, Jake Neighbours didn't play the full season. Jake Neighbours was up and down. The next season, he scored 24 goals in 68 games. And the next season was when he hit 30 goals. So his third full season in the National Hockey League was when he hit 30 goals. Brady Tkachuk, 22 goals in his first season, 21 in his second season, 17 in his third season, and his fourth season, he hit 30 goals. Both of these guys are power forwards. Both of these guys set up shop in front of the net. Joey's not crazy saying that. Now, 40 might be a lofty expectation, but Jake Neighbours right now is playing like a 30 to 35 goal scorer because you don't find these power forwards in the National Hockey League very often.
Yeah, I would be cautionary right now to jump even the gun at 30 goals, but if he continues to develop and continues to stay with this kind of going into the dirty areas mindset, then yeah, he could absolutely be that kind of a player for the Blues. Because like you said, there are not a lot of power forwards in the NHL. We were talking about this before the show. How many guys can you really categorize that as not just power forwards, because there are some power forwards, but power forwards that have the potential to be 30-goal scorers or are 30-goal scorers in the NHL? It's not a lot of them. And you're probably thinking, like, well, why is that? A lot of guys come into the league and they want to play that offensive mindset with speed.
Everybody wants to be a sniper.
Yeah, nobody really wants to go into that, get it near the goalie's face, get inside the crease, try and get those hard-working goals. Why? Because it is hard. It is a grind on your body for 82 games to go in there where there are tree trunks trying to knock you over. But Jake Neighbours says, hey, if I'm going to make it here, Craig Berube has told me this is what I've got to do. And that's exactly what he's doing. I think this is kind of what they were hoping they were going to get from Jake Neighbours last year, which I thought was too much pressure to put on him as a rookie. Yeah. But now that we're here in year two, you're seeing what they saw in Jake Neighbours. Because after year one, I was like, yeah, maybe 10 goals. Like, maybe he can sneak into the top 9, probably a fourth liner. Man, after this year, it is fair to kind of go, man, what is the ceiling for Jake Neighbours? Because it's certainly a lot higher than I thought coming into the season.
And I loved what Shen said. It's not that he just goes and stands there. He knows when to go to the front of the net. And that goal that he scored last night was the prototypical of it. He was up at the faceoff dot, but he saw the play developing and went straight to the net and was standing on the doorstep. But real quick before, because there's one other player I want to talk about. First of all, he just scored 2 goals last night. That's against Buffalo, who's got Rasmus Dahlin and Owen Power, 2 very highly touted defensemen in the National Hockey League. Everybody loves Dom's analytics. Go check out his analytics for those 2 defensemen. Jake Neighbours just scored 2 goals against one of those guys. You got 2 goals against the Blackhawks. Man, not that good. The Nashville Predators, one of the team that is viewed as having a very good defense. He picks up a goal against that one. The LA Kings, he picks up a goal with Drew Doughty on the other side. The New Jersey Devils, the Pittsburgh Penguins. He's scoring these these goals against tough defensive teams, and that is just a guy who was only in his second full season in the National Hockey League. So outstanding night for Jake Neighbours, and really very optimistic of what he's going to provide this Blues team down the stretch. If you're a team or if you're a fan that's hoping this retool is done faster, Jake Neighbours is going to be a massive reason why. So is Jordan Kyrou. And it's weird because he didn't score yet again. Still in this goal drought schneid that he's on.
8 games now, I believe.
Yeah. But he changed that game in 24 seconds last night. Greg Berube calls a timeout after Buffalo ties it. Very animated on the bench, even a guy who's dealing with a sickness right now.
Probably made him feel better.
Probably. I mean, you get that phlegm out of your voice by yelling at everybody. 24 seconds, Jordan Kyrou made the play with Kevin Hayes happen and the play with Braden Schenn happen. So no questioning how good he was offensively. But, and it's odd to say a but right here, he took 4 shifts in the third period. The only player that took less shifts than Jordan Kyrou was Sammy Blais. Now, you see that and you say, well, yeah, of course, he defensive liability, and you don't want to put him out there. Something or nothing, T-Bone, that Jordan Kyrou, in a game where you were up by 3 goals at the time, then 2, Jordan Kyrou was getting put on the bench, and Toropchenko and Oskar Sundqvist were taking shifts ahead of him.
So typically, I would probably say, even if it is a 3-goal game, you still would like probably Kyrou to be out there, especially this year. I don't think he's been as much of a defensive liability.
He hasn't.
He still is, I would say, but he's not like, what did we say coming into the season? The goal is, hey, can he be like average defensively? I think he's gotten pretty dang close to being that. I'm going to say nothing, though, and this is why. I saw this in Matt DeFrank's piece today in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Last night, the Hayes, Schenn, and Kyrou line had the most defensive zone starts among the forward lines. And you're going, well, of course they did. It's Braden Schenn and Kevin Hayes. Why would they not be out there? Guys, I don't think a line with Kyrou, even if it had Schenn and Hayes, if Hayes was here last year, would have had that many defensive zone starts last year because Kyrou was such a defensive liability. I think that stat right there that I just read, forget about the 4 shifts in the third period, definitely probably did want to get more defensive-minded. And honestly, I'm kind of okay with that, even though Kyrou has been better defensively this year. You didn't need a game-breaking goal there. I don't mind it at all. I think it's nothing. I mean, the fact that he had the most defensive, he was a part of a line that had the most defensive zone starts in last night's game is very telling to me. It tells me that the Blues feel more comfortable about Jordan Kyrou being out there defensively. Maybe not so much that they want him out there in crunch time, but that's fine. If he's at least average to where they can throw him out there for shifts periods 1 and 2 while the game is still close, and then when they want to really lock it down, they move away and go more to the defensive guys like an Oskar Sundqvist, to a Jake Neighbours, those type of guys, then yeah, I don't really care. But long as he is capable in those during the time in which the game is close and is helping out offensively like he did last night, that was like the ideal kind of game for Kyrou. Would you like him to score goals? Yes, but he was still helping even though he didn't. He was fine defensively. It was part of a line that had the most defensive zone start times, and in the third period, you wanted to shut the door down. So it's okay to kind of pull him aside and go more to your best defensive forwards. I think this is nothing.
Yeah, it's absolutely nothing. And you could sit there and be like, oh, wow, they sat him there late in the third period. Yeah, because you were up by 2 goals and you wanted to close out that win. Look at who was on the ice. Sundqvist, Toropchenko, Jake Neighbours, which, again, is telling you the faith that they have in that player. But Jordan Kyrou, in all intents and purposes, did his job in that second period. Third period, you find ways to get more opportunities, but then late, you tighten the stranglehold on the opponent. You kill him off, and that's what the Blues accomplished last night with those guys jumping in there for Jordan Kyrou. So really good game for Jordan Kyrou, even better game for Jake Neighbours, and the Blues are back in the win column, 5-0 against Eastern Conference teams, and now they go on to play the Arizona Coyotes tomorrow night, which we will have your First Community Credit Union pregame starting at 7 o'clock. Chris Kerper and Joe Vitale with Puck Drop against the Arizona Coyotes. Plenty more Blues conversation coming your way throughout the afternoon, but coming up next, the Cardinals are headed to the winter meetings, and seems like there's still a lot more work to be done from the Cardinals side. They want to add bullpen help. How many do they actually need to make you optimistic about this upcoming season? We'll discuss that and one name that's popped up in the rumor mill next on BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. So the Cardinals are headed to the winter meetings and still have some things to be checked off of that checklist. Alongside Tanner Hendrickson and Grant Francis, I'm Alex Ferrario, as it's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. What's on that checklist? We've all discussed a lot about still going out there and, if you can, make a trade for a Glasnow, for a Dylan Cease, bring in a higher leverage starting pitcher to add to an already strong, at least for the innings sake of the conversation, rotation. But we still have yet to see moves on the bullpen. Hold on, let me rephrase that. The Cardinals did re-sign Wilking Rodriguez. So they did get something done for their bullpen, T-Bone, and they claimed a couple of guys. So, frankly, they're almost there with this bullpen being completed for the upcoming season.
You are truly the worst.
I really am. I'm the Toby of the Cardinals conversation. But in all reality,
you are that guy.
I know. You got to fix this bullpen. You have to exit Nashville from the winter meetings if you're the Cardinals, saying, our bullpen is stacked, and the only thing left for us to accomplish is see if there's a trade out there to make our rotation more dangerous. And this is from John Denton of MLB.com, our Cardinals insider here on 101 ESPN. With the heavy lifting already out of the way, St. Louis can now focus on fortifying its bullpen, exploring the trade market, and possibly unclogging its overcrowded outfield at the winter meetings. That's where I would start this with, T-Bone. I wouldn't look at the free agents. Frankly, the free agents might be there by the end of the winter meetings, and you can find out if there's discount players. I'm looking at teams that want Tyler O'Neill and Dylan Carlson and are willing to send me bullpen pieces that I can hopefully cash in like I did with Giovanni Gallegos, because then you're getting more control, then you're getting more upside, and you're not using that hopium with these free agent pitchers that they click like they've done in the past. I would be trying to upgrade my bullpen via trade and then figuring out what else needs to be done after the winter meetings.
Yeah, I would be exploring every avenue. And when I say free agency, too, it's not just the Jordan Hicks route. They're not in on Josh Hader, but it's not just that like $10 million plus arm per year guys. There's a lot of good relievers. Some of them that we probably have never really even heard of as baseball fans. That you look when they sign them, you'll look at their baseball reference card and go, "Oh, hey, that guy looks pretty good. That guy's been around the league a little bit." So I think at the winter meetings, they're probably, my guess is that they are going to really be hitting that trade conversation. I still am skeptical of what they could get for Tyler O'Neill in return. I know everybody that covers the team seems to be believing that there's still some value. Maybe you can try and flip him for a project yourself. So you give them Tyler O'Neill, a guy that's proven it for 1 year, and you get a bullpen arm that's proven it for 1 year and's got decent stuff. So maybe they're able to do that. I think Burleson's the guy that I'm highlighting going into the winter meetings as like the top trade chip that they're probably going to bring to the table, because I'm skeptical that they want to move a Gorman, even if it is for not even a bullpen arm, but for Dylan Cease in the rotation. Burleson's the kind of guy that you could probably trade. You trade away a guy that's got years of control. He doesn't really have much of a position, I would say, here in St. Louis. Like, if I said today, looking at the roster and projecting it going forward, what is Alec Burleson for this team? Fourth outfielder, maybe not even that, probably like the fifth outfielder, but is a left-handed bat that hits for contact coming off the bench, which that's a nice thing to have, don't get me wrong. But if I can trade him and get a reliever in return that's got some control, that's got some pretty good stuff that you can slot into your kind of sixth, seventh inning mix, I think you have to explore that if you're the Cardinals. I think they've got to be looking. I don't think they got to do all this by the end of the winter meetings, but they've got to start kind of laying the groundworks and figuring out, okay, who are the two guys we're going to get? I don't think you can go into next season just getting one and saying, okay, we've got insert free agent or trade name here in our bullpen and Gio and Ryan Helsley, because I have serious questions about Gio after what I saw last year. You should treat relievers, when you look at their baseball reference page, you should treat the very last year as the year in which you are projecting them forward. And what I mean by that is, though Gio has been very good in his time here in St. Louis, wipe that all to the side in your projection and go, okay, he had a down year last year. Let's plan on that going forward. I would treat relievers like milk in the fridge that doesn't have a date on it. You know, I would be very cautious because relievers go up and down so often that I would be looking to get somebody else to slot ahead of Gio this offseason. In fact, I'd get two guys to slot ahead of him.
Okay, well, first of all, don't waste that milk. Even if it doesn't have a date on it, if it smells fine, just drink it. There's no worries there. See, what worries me about it doesn't worry me. I don't know if I would trade Burleson for the bullpen arm, because I feel like Burleson might be that piece that can get you that other starting pitcher. And I know you can't hold a guy back in hopes that you get another trade done. That's the conversations you got to have. If you feel like you can have them, then Burleson doesn't go. And I don't believe Carlson or Burleson or Carlson or O'Neill have that much upside that could bring you back something. But a team might be desperate enough to get one of those pieces and trade you a bullpen arm that they don't know if they need. And that's what Giovanni Gallegos was. Giovanni Gallegos was the guy that the Yankees looked at and you're like, yeah, we don't really know if we need this because we've got other arms in the bullpen right now. And you were able to trade a Luke Voit, and they got some good years out of him, and you've got Giovanni Gallegos. That's why I would go O'Neill and Carlson there before I would even touch the Burleson route, because I think Burleson might be more valuable to you in a bigger trade. And if you don't get anything done that route, if it doesn't seem like steam's picking up, then that's when you kind of explore trading a Burleson for a bullpen arm. And one bullpen arm that popped up in the rumor mill, T-Bone, that you sent us yesterday is the Cleveland Guardians' Emmanuel Clase. And this is a 25-year-old reliever, closer for the Cleveland Guardians, one of the best closers in the American League over the last couple of years. He's been an all-star back-to-back seasons, but he's also under control for, the next 4 seasons? This coming year, he's got $2.5 million, $4.5 million the year after, $6 million, and then he's got a $10 million club option for the following 2 seasons. So you'd be acquiring a closer, not just a bullpen arm, a closer for the next 5 years. I would love to do this, but this seems like you're trading Nolan Gorman to get him. Could you get him for Alec Burleson? Probably not. Cleveland's going to want a little bit more than that. But this is the type of trade that I don't care what my rotation looks like. I'm good enough with my rotation if I'm bringing this high of an upside bullpen arm in.
Yeah, see, I wouldn't make this trade at all because of what I said about bullpen arms. They're so they fluctuate so much.
But he's not costing you anything.
I mean,
depending on the trade capital.
I was going to say, he's not costing anything in terms of money, but he probably would take a Nolan Gorman type return.
Really?
I mean, he's got 5 years of control, essentially. If he pitches really well, he's got 5 years of control at like $35 million. That's a hell of a deal if you're any Major League Baseball team. And when you look at him, he's one of the best closers in all of baseball. So, yeah, I think he would take a Nolan Gorman-type return. It is interesting that his name popped up because we've been talking about relievers. And when I first saw it, I'm not going to lie, when I saw Jeff Passan reported this on ESPN, I was like, ooh, Class A is available? And then I read his contract. I was like, oh, that's going to cost a lot. So, though in theory, yes, he is the kind of arm you're looking for, swing and miss, high-leverage type arm, he's not the guy for the St. Louis Cardinals because he would cost a lot. He would cost more than Alec Burleson. I looked up at trade simulators, the baseball trade simulator website, and I was like, okay, what would it be? And, like, I looked at Class A. He's, like, worth 51 in terms of what they view as the value in terms of things. Just to give you an idea, Burleson is a 5 value. So, like, it would take a lot to package around them just to get Class A. It would probably take a Gorman. He's not the guy for the Cardinals, even though I do love him personally.
The hard part is this is the type of pitcher you need to acquire. Maybe not so many years on their contract that you have left or the control that you have. Maybe it's somebody who's got, like, 2 years of control. But I don't want – the reason I don't want the guys that are available via free agency, at least to start, is because those guys kind of fall into the same category of what you got. You've got a Helsley, you've got a Gallegos, you got a Jojo Romero. All these guys look like they could be something for you, but you're on hopium. This type of move, and I don't know who else would be available. We'll find that out once the rumors start up in the winter meetings. These are the types of moves that the Cardinals need to pull off for me to be optimistic about the upcoming season. You've got to get that high leverage arm, not just another arm to go into the bullpen.
That I do agree with. I do think you're going to have to get another high leverage arm. What I don't necessarily agree with is it necessarily has to be a guy that is, like, when they sign him, you immediately go, oh, yeah, I know who that is. And what I mean by that is that's typically the top of the market. Like, there are a million bullpen signings in an offseason. How many of them do you truly know? Like, you're going to know when Jordan Hicks signs. You're going to know the Josh Hader. You're going to know a couple of the other kind of top-end arms like Phil Maton, I think, is available again. Those kind of names you're going to know, but there could be like a $5 million deal out there for our old friend Luis Garcia. Luis Garcia last year had a down year. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't great. But the last 2 years prior to that was great for the Cardinals and was great for the San Diego Padres. Like, that's maybe the kind of deal you're looking for, that when you sign him, you look at him and you go, I could see how that guy fits into the seventh inning role. Maybe you're not looking to get a guy that slots ahead of Giovanni Gallegos, but you're looking for guys that can kind of be like in that same tier of him. And I think you need two. I think they're probably going to approach this and say, no, we just need one. We've got Gio, we've got Helsley. JoJo's kind of on the outside there, fifth, sixth inning role. We just need that one guy. And I think you need two.
Well, I think it's going to be a right-hander also.
I would agree with that.
Because you got Liberatore, you've got probably Thompson or Matz, and you've got JoJo Romero. Like, you've got your left-handed side ready. It's going to be a right-hander, and it's going to be somebody. It's got to be somebody with swing and miss stuff. It's got to be somebody with swing and miss stuff. Otherwise, they're going to be in a massive, not a massive problem, but you still don't have that swing and miss, with the exception of if Ryan Helsley gets back to his old form, which, again, I can't sit there and expect that for the upcoming season.
And they've got to that point in terms of swing and miss, and I think that is what they're targeting, to their credit. I think they are looking for swing and miss guys. They've got plenty of those guys. Like, if you need a contact pitcher, like you need a ground ball, you can turn to Palante.
Yeah.
You can turn to a John King, who they got from the Texas Rangers. They've got those guys. What they're looking for is that extra swing and miss stuff.
We'll find out once the winter meetings get underway. Plenty of rumors will be starting up over the weekend, and we'll have you covered when we get back on Monday. He's Tanner Hendrickson, Graham Francis. I'm Alex Ferrario. We are at the Centene Community Ice Center at the ENB Granite Studios. When we come back, NFL Quick Hitters headed into another exciting week, including one guy that basically just wrote his MVP candidacy last night. We'll discuss that next on 101 ESPN.
Grant Francis here with a SportsCenter update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Last night, the Blues remained perfect in Eastern Conference play and proved a 5-0 with a 6-4 win over the Buffalo Sabres. Jake Neighbours and Braden Shin had 2 goals each in the game. Blues are now 12-9-1 on the season with 25 points. Good for 4th in the Central Division, just 1 point behind 3rd place Winnipeg in the Central Division standings. They'll be back in action tomorrow night in Arizona, taking on the team that's 1 point behind them in the standings in the Coyotes. It'll be a 7 o'clock pregame and an 8 o'clock puck drop right here on your home for the Blues 101 ESPN. And then tonight, we'll have the Pac-12 championship for you here on 101 ESPN. Oregon and Washington pregame right after the Fast Lane at 6 o'clock. I'm Grant Francis. The SportsCenter update's been driven by Johnny Londoff. Find new roads and shop 24/7 at londoff.com and londoffautoplex.com. Are you kidding me?
Alongside Tanner Hendrickson and Graham Francis, I'm Alex Ferrario. We head into another weekend of NFL where the playoff conversation starts to really heat up, but so does the MVP conversation. And we talked about this earlier this week, T-Bone, it was actually one of my scenarios. I think it was better to forget it, that Dak Prescott wins the MVP this season. And Dak last night just improved the probability of him winning the MVP this season. We talk about not knowing what quarterback has been the best QB in the NFL this season. Maybe not all season, but from week 6 on, Dak Prescott has been the best quarterback. Last night, 299 yards through the air, 3 touchdowns, a 75 QBR rating, and drove his team down for a late game lead to help Dallas beat the Seattle Seahawks. I don't know what else Dak can do. Of course, we all judge him in the postseason, which we judge him and Mike McCarthy in the postseason. But now he looks like the best quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, man, he looks really good in that game last night. I was kind of skeptical on the MVP conversation. I still think he has some to prove because they've got the Eagles coming up again here shortly. But, man, there is no denying.
I can't wait for that one, by the way.
Cowboys look awesome right now. And it's not just Dak. Like, he has played great, and I don't want to take anything away from him. Dude, the other thing that's been so huge for Dak Prescott in this MVP conversation is CeeDee Lamb is starting to look like not just a number 1 wide receiver, a dominant wide receiver.
Well, and how about Jake Ferguson, too? I mean, we talked so much about losing Dalton Schultz in the offseason of, like, what they were going to do. Jake Ferguson looks like an incredible tight end for that team also.
Yeah, and I think Dak in his MVP conversation, and look, I think only one of these teams has a good defense, and that's the Eagles.
Yeah.
Like, these are the next 4 games for the Cowboys. And this is how he wins the MVP, as he performs kind of like he did last night. They've got the Eagles next week on Sunday Night Football. Then they go to Buffalo, to Miami, and then they've got Detroit after that. That 4-game stretch, he plays well in that against 4 teams that are not just playoff teams, but teams that would, maybe not Buffalo, but 3 of those 4 teams will be viewed as like potential Super Bowl contenders. Mm-hmm. You can then lock him up as the MVP if he plays well. So I definitely think that there is a shot that he could be the MVP. I was skeptical going into the Thursday night game, but then I was really impressed after last night's performance.
I think that Philly game really decides the MVP candidacy because the rest of those, 100%. I mean, the defense isn't anywhere near what Philadelphia's is. And I thought Dak actually was very competitive against Philadelphia. It just came down to the defense not getting the stop late against that Eagles team.
Yeah, you know, it's funny, real quick, you said that, and as I look, I'm like, yeah, he threw for 374 yards and 3 touchdowns against the Eagles
he was
earlier
awesome.
this year.
He was awesome against them. It's just his defense didn't solidify that victory. So he's done everything. I don't know of a better quarterback than what Dak has been really since week 6, but overall this season his numbers are better than any other quarterback, and the touchdown to interception ratio tells that. Now, on the flip side of that game last night, I think we saw a team that is about to basically have the fat ladies sing because the Seattle Seahawks, they're not making the playoffs. And it's really disappointing because I was very excited about Seattle this season with Lockett, Metcalf, Kenneth Walker, and Jackson Smith and Jigba with Geno Smith. But that defense has just been absolutely underwhelming. And sitting at 6-6, still obviously a chance to be in the playoffs.
But I don't even think they're the second best team in the NFC West anymore. I think the Rams are better than Seattle. And I hate saying that.
Well, I mean, the Rams went 2-0 against them, so I don't think you're wrong.
And Vikings get Justin Jefferson back. They're a better team.
It's going to come down to, because they're technically a game up right now. They could be all even by the end of the weekend. Basically, it comes down to, do you believe in the Packers, Rams, or Saints more than the Seahawks?
Yeah, and I mean, I believe in the Seahawks because of what they've shown on paper, but I believe in at least two of those other teams because of the product on the field has been better than what the paper looks like.
I think, and I'm not saying this as the Rams fan. Trust me. I'm saying this as a guy that watches the NFL. I think the Rams are going to be the team that sneaks in and gets past the Seahawks. They beat them 2 times, so really all you got to do is finish with the same record with them, and you're going to have the tiebreaker over them. This is the Rams' remaining schedule. Cleveland, which they don't have a quarterback anymore, so it's going to be a fight to win that football game, but I think they can. At Baltimore, that's probably a loss for the Rams. Then they go against Washington, they go against the Saints, at the Giants. I think they can win all 3 of those games. Then they're at San Fran. That one's probably a loss. So they're going to win probably 4 of their next 6. I look at the schedule for Seattle. There's 2 more wins in it.
Yeah, maybe 2 more wins.
I think they can beat Arizona. I think they can beat Tennessee. But Pittsburgh's going to be tough with the defense. Philly and San Francisco, who they've got coming up in the next 2 weeks, are both better than them.
And I'm not sure Seattle's defense can stop at least Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems they have issues in that area.
I'm very skeptical that the Seahawks will hold on to that last wild card spot and make the playoffs. I was one of the highest people on them coming into the year because of all those offensive weapons that you said, but then they drafted Witherspoon in the first round to help the secondary. They brought in Bobby Wagner, who I thought was going to help against the run, and you're right, the defense just has not taken off.
Well, another team that is in danger of missing the playoffs still has a chance, though, much like, of course, the Seahawks do, is the Buffalo Bills, also in a similar position at 6-6. And the report came out, yesterday, T-Bone, on The Athletic, saying that Sean McDermott is not expected to be fired or the Buffalo Bills to move on from him after this season. Is that the smartest move by Buffalo? Because Sean McDermott has been there now for, 5 seasons? 6 seasons?
Longer than that.
Has it? It's been a while. But they've gone through 2 offensive coordinators since Brian Daboll left. They're on their second one right now. And although they have looked better, it is very evident that Sean McDermott can't seem to take that next step with this Buffalo Bills team. Here's the problem, though. I think Sean McDermott's an incredible coach, and if they move on from him, somebody's going to sweep him up immediately. Frankly, the Chargers should fire Brandon Staley so that they could hire Sean McDermott. But I don't know if there's somebody out there that makes Buffalo any better without Sean McDermott.
That's kind of my stance, too, is I think Sean McDermott's a great head coach. I think he's just got a quarterback that turns the ball over too much. And with that being said, it's still one of the best quarterbacks in the league. But you're going to ride the highs of highs and the lows of lows of Josh Allen. And I think you're going to see constantly that you're probably a 10, 11-win team. And on a really bad year, they'll probably win, 9 games this year, 8, 9 games this year. I don't think it's hard to pinpoint the issue for Buffalo. Because Josh Allen is too good to just say, oh, we got to get another quarterback. Because he was leading the NFL in touchdowns for the longest stretch until Dak just surpassed him. But on the other side, he was leading the league in interceptions. That's not a Sean McDermott thing. Sean McDermott's not telling him to throw the ball into double coverage, throwing the ball into triple coverage, where I see some of those throws and go, what the hell was that? Sean McDermott's a great head coach. And you're right. If you fire him, sometimes the grass ain't always greener on the other side, man. I think you stick with Sean McDermott if you're the Buffalo Bills, because I think somebody else would hire him, and I think if the Chargers brought him in, I would pick them to be a playoff team right away.
Chargers make that team so much better because they got a competent head coach that can get the best out of both sides of the ball. One more before we get to Ask Us Anything, which you can send us your questions that we'll answer, 314-399-9646 to our Air Comfort Service text line. Also, you can send it to our YouTube page at 101 ESPN STL. We're live on YouTube thanks to the Air Alliance team. The NFC Championship preview. Philadelphia and San Francisco, what is that? That's later on. It's Sunday afternoon. It's not the Sunday night game. That, unfortunately, we have to watch the freaking Packers play.
What?
I know, sorry. I don't think this is an NFC Championship preview. I think Dallas is going to be a part of that NFC Championship game. I know there are so many doubts about Mike McCarthy because he just doesn't perform in the postseason.
By the way, pause real quick. I'm sorry. McCarthy, what the hell are we throwing the ball for on third down last night?
I thought it was a great move.
Oh, my
Showed
God.
he's got big cojones, and that's what I like about him.
It showed why I don't trust him.
Dude, he's changed that offense, though. Like, he really has. For some reason, they look like a more competent offense than what they did with Kellen Moore there. So I don't know who's – frankly, if I had to pick, I would say San Francisco won't be there. I think it'll be a Philadelphia and Dallas NFC Championship.
Yeah, see, I think this is a NFC Championship game preview, and I think where it's going to get tough is I think Dallas, because of the way things kind of fall right now where Philly is the top seed, I can't see Dallas, even if they beat Philadelphia next week, what we were just talking about in that big matchup on Sunday Night Football, I don't think they can still surpass the Eagles because they're 2 games back of Philadelphia. I think at best they can just finish as the top quote-unquote wild card team in that 5 spot. That means you're going to run into Philadelphia in the second round of the playoffs. And I just think San Fran and Philadelphia are just better teams. Even though Dak's played great, I got to see it against those teams that we just mentioned earlier. They've got 4 pretty tough games coming up. Dak performs well in that, then okay, maybe I'll start to buy into that and say Dallas can go on a run. Right now, though, I just think San Francisco and Philly are by far the best teams in the NFC. I think this is an NFC Championship preview this week.
He's Tanner Hendrickson. I'm Alex Ferrario, Grant Francis as well. Week 13 starting up this weekend. We'll get into some college football conversation later on in the 1 o'clock hour. But coming up next, Ask Us Anything. You send us any question you want. We will answer it for Ask Us Anything. 314-399-9646. We'll get to that next here on 101 ESPN.
got questions, we may have the answers. Maybe. It's BK and Ferrario's Questions and Answers on 101 ESPN.
314-399-9646. That is the Air Comfort Service text line alongside Tanner Hendrickson and Graham Francis. I'm Alex Ferrario. We are at Centene Community Ice Center live in our E&B Granite Studios. As we get to ask us anything, you send us anything you want to know, and we will give you an answer. We'll start with this one. Guys, why do so many people seem to be still down on Jordan Kyrou? The numbers are better than what it was last season at this point of the year. He changed the outcome of that game. What's going on here? I can understand the frustration because when you're paid $8 million, you're expecting to see goal production. And when you look at him compared to Robert Thomas, you're thinking, oh, hey, you should be at 10 goals right now. How does Jake Neighbours have more goals than Jordan Kyrou? It's the situations that you're looking at. And Jordan Kyrou, albeit only has 4 goals on the season, but he's also a -4, which was a -17 at this point last year. And he also has how many assists on the season now? 10 assists on the season. So you're getting more contributions from him. But I want to bring Grant Francis in on this one because Grant was talking to Ken Hitchcock yesterday during practice, and he asked Hitch about the start to the season for Kyrou. So, Grant, go ahead.
Yeah, I was asking him, do you think with Kyrou, since his offensive numbers have been down compared to last year, is it just the fact that he is trying to focus in on the defensive side more, which is affecting his numbers? And he kind of laughed, and he was like, no, that's not what's going on. He was talking about how players just go through a growth phase. And Jordan Kyrou is still a young player, even though he's making the money that he's making this year. And I understand a -4 isn't ideal for that. But again, 12, 13 goals better than he was last season at this time. He said he's just in a growth phase right now, and players go through it. Some players, it doesn't take as much time. You look at a guy like Matthew Tkachuk, who came right into the league. He didn't really have too much time that he needed to take to adjust to the NHL level. But then you look at guys like Jack Hughes, and you look at guys like Alexis Lafreniere, and these are #1 overall picks. People were calling them busts for 2-3 seasons, and now all of a sudden they're, Jack Hughes is a superstar and Alexis Lafreniere is on the rise. Jordan Kyrou is just in this growth phase, and yeah, maybe it's taking him a little longer than what would be ideal to adjust to the NHL level. But he's still in that growth phase, and you got to give him time to work through it. The offense will come, and Jordan Kyrou is sort of on that same page. I mean, he's in the right mindset. I talked to him a little bit earlier in the season about his offensive numbers, and he did say he's more on the offensive or defensive side of things, the focus for him right now. And the feeling of the offense will come is still there for Jordan Kyrou, and I believe that as well. And Ken Hitchcock sort of reiterated that yesterday.
You know how many goals Nathan MacKinnon had in his 4th full season in the National Hockey League?
50.
16.
Oh.
He scored 16 goals in his 4th full season. He was a -14 that year. You know what he did the next season? 39 goals and 97 points. Takes a while to get kind of comfortable in your shoes or skates in the NHL.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for the Kyrou talk is I think there's like 2-3 things to it. One, when you do get the contract and whether they said it or not, you become the face of the franchise. And when you have the label that Kyrou has, which is a goal scorer, when you're not scoring goals, it's tough to kind of shake off the old narrative. It's very tough to shake off the old narrative of, hey, Kyrou's a bad defensive player. Why is that? Because there's not really a great stat for that. I know plus minus will tell you that. Plus minus is still kind of an iffy stat.
It's a finicky stat.
Yeah. So there is no stat to tell you Kyrou's playing better defensively. It's not like in baseball we have defensive runs saved, and even that's a fickle stat. But there's no great metric for defense. So when you see him, when he comes up as a fan and you're watching Kyrou and you go, that guy's dogging it back. This isn't a good defensive player. Once you make up your mind on somebody, it kind of sticks there for a really long time, and it's hard to shake that off. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong from the fan base. I'm not, because I have that sometimes myself, too.
It's a predetermined notion. But it happens with Binnington, too. One soft goal goes in, you're like, Binnington back to his old self.
And it's hard for a player to get rid of that narrative. And the guy that I think of, and it's different level of talent for the players, but for the Cardinals, it was always Bader. Yeah. Bader was a perfectly adequate center fielder for the Cardinals.
Yep.
The issue for him was he ended up having to hit 5th because they didn't develop a good offense around the organization. But you saw the first year year and a half without, I think it's been a year and a half now, without Harrison Bader in center field. What do they need this offseason? They need a center fielder that can catch the ball when it's in the air.
And how about Jay Bomeister? I mean, Jay Bomeister spent the majority of his career all the way up until 2019 as the guy that everyone said, oh, he's not good defensively. And then 2019 happens and oh my gosh, this guy's incredible defensively. This is what happens in the NHL. Let's pump the brakes. Just because he got the money now doesn't mean he's not going to be worth that money in 3 to 4 years when the salary cap continues to rise and other players are making $12, $13, $14 million. Couple more on Ask Us Anything. Fellas, what would you need to see to consider the Cardinals offseason to be grade A?
I think you still need to get a top-end rotation arm, a Glasnow, a C, someone of that ilk that I can say, okay, that guy's starting game 1 or starting game 2 with Sonny Gray. And then I think you need 2 bullpen arms. I know that sounds like a lot. It's manageable for the Cardinals. If they got the top tier starter and then they signed a 1 bullpen arm, then I would probably give them a B+. Yeah. But to me, that's what you still have to do.
Yeah, I think you need to get a high leverage arm with swing and miss stuff for your bullpen. And I personally, if I'm going to give you an A, you got to get somebody better than Sonny Gray for this rotation. One more. Guys, what's the favorite Christmas movie in your house? I mean, I watch freaking every Christmas movie. It's the one holiday that Halloween, I do the same thing from start to finish. I'm watching something every night. But the Ferrario household has a Christmas movie on every single night. But my favorite one is It's a Wonderful Life.
Oh, that's a good one.
Every evening on Christmas Day, that night, my wife and I sit down with the girls and we watch it every year.
I'm trying to think what mine. I haven't even watched a Christmas movie yet this year, which is shocking because I've been listening to Christmas music since October.
You've been listening since last December.
I think mine is Santa Claus is Coming to Town. The
old school one?
The old school one where it is what do they call that? Stop action? Is that what it's called?
Stop action, claymation kind of.
I love the Santa Claus is Coming to Town. I've got the ornaments of Heat Miser and what's the other one's name?
The Frost.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Jack Frost?
Yeah. Is that what his name? I thought it was Cold Miser or something. Anyways, I've got the ornaments of those guys. I love the songs in that one. I think Santa Claus is Coming to Town. Old school me, 1970. Ah, man, that is my favorite movie.
Grant, you seem like a How the Grinch Stole Christmas kind of guy.
I'm going to be honest with you, and if you've listened while I've been on. Not Christmas. I'm not a big movie guy. You know this.
That's true.
So,
That's true.
I mean,
you're like Tanner.
Usually in the house, my family will have Home Alone on a lot. And
that's a great one.
A lot of times, though, if there's a movie on, I might sit down and watch it for 15 minutes, and then my attention span is short. I can't sit through a whole movie usually, so I'll go do something else. Right. And yeah, so Home Alone will be on in the background for me usually.
Grant's the guy that gives my generation a bad rap.
I also don't like Christmas music, so don't ask me that either.
Hot damn, that's what we wanted to see. I'll take you the hottest take right now. This is going to piss Randy off. Die Hard is not a Christmas movie.
I agree.
Die Hard is not a Christmas movie, ladies and gentlemen. I said it here first. I'll take your backlash. Tanner Hendrickson, Grant Francis, I'm Alex Ferrario. Jordan Binnington picked up the victory last night, but he's got a number that's creeping towards what he did in the early portion of last season. I still don't think it's a problem. Surprise, surprise. I'll explain next on 101 ESPN.
101 ESPN is your home for Blues hockey. Every month during the season, you can check out either the 101 mobile app or 101ESPN.com for your chance to get entered to win for a pair of tickets to an upcoming Blues home game at Enterprise Center. New winners picked every month throughout the season for free tickets to see the Blues in action, courtesy of 101 ESPN. Get entered to win now online at 101ESPN.com or on your 101 mobile app.
Works it into the Blues zone, over to the far point. Dahlin with a shot. Right on. Rebound. They've tied it. Off of Peyton Krebs. It goes 5-hole on Binnington. Off the far boards now. Trying to come all the way through to Benson. Looking for the tap in. Binnington there with another save. And now it slides through and goes in. Looked like he had it locked down, but the referee skates behind and points in.
Well, I mean, they're in the same boat as our team right now. I think we don't like giving up these goals, and they don't like giving them up either. So it's a team thing, and that goalies are part of it. We all got to be better, goalies included.
That's the head coach, Craig Berube. Now, if you heard my tease, and then you just heard that, you're probably like Grant Francis thinking, oh, geez, Alex, a 6-4 win, and you're bashing on the goaltending. Alex is the Binnington defender, and he's gonna come on the air and talk bad about Jordan Binnington. I am not, sir or madam, so you can turn that radio dial up because I'm going to keep the optimism for Jordan Binnington. Look, the reason I bring this up is because a couple of goals that if you were to ask Jordan Binnington, he'd say he want those back after last night's game. And it has been a trend since the start of that West Coast road trip. Not just Binnington. Joel Hofer's given up a few as well. I mean, you went, 3 out of 4 games where the goaltender was pulled for the backup goaltender to come in. That's not a good trend that you want. But it's also a similar trend to what we saw last season with Jordan Binnington. That's now 5 of his last 7 games that he has given up 3 or more goals. And included in that stretch, it's games that he's come in relief for. So pucks are getting past him. We'll talk about the structure and how I think it affects Binnington in just a bit. But here's the thing. Even with him giving up those 3 or more goals, he's still pulling out victories. And Curbs and Joey were talking about this last night on the postgame show. I don't know why I didn't know how to pronounce that word. You guys both, and listening, you think Grant Fuhr was a great goaltender, right? Should be considered because he's a Hall of Famer. Didn't get an answer. T-Bone? You don't know who Grant Fuhr is?
No, I know, okay. But it's hard for me to speak on experience.
Solid goaltender, I'd say, Alex.
Yeah,
I'd say great goaltender.
I know great goaltender. You don't get in the Hall of Fame by being average.
He finished his career with an .887 save percentage.
Wow.
You're probably thinking, wow, that's terrible.
That is bad.
But you know what he was great at? Winning hockey games. He had 403 victories in his career.
I'm starting to think the win as an NHL goalie is like the win like a starter. Where it is, I got the win. I gave up 600, but hey, I got the win.
Is? When goalies are getting the win, it means they're making the important saves of a hockey game. When pitchers get the win, they exit the game with a tie game because they gave up 5 runs, and then their team scores a run the next half inning. Oh, hey, look, I got the victory. That's not the case with the goaltender. Last night I thought was a perfect example. So he saw 16 shots from the Buffalo Sabres in that second period, did give up 2 goals. But then he saw 15 shots in the third period and gave up 1 goal. And that was a game where you took the lead. It was 5-3 before Jake Neighbours scored the goal to make it 6-3. If your goaltender's numbers don't look great, understandable. And, yeah, you're worried that the trend kind of continues. But the difference from last season when that trend was happening and this season was that Binnington also wasn't winning games. Binnington's winning games right now. Even if he's given up 3 or more goals in front of him, that trend subsides at some point in the season. But Jordan Binnington, despite the struggle of giving up 3 or more goals in 5 of his last 7 games, he's still pulling out victories. And to me, that's the more important factor when you're going through this roller coaster.
Yeah, I think it just depends on, you almost have to know the situation. Because, when you just hear that number, Wyshynski, you would probably go,
Dom.
Wow. Yeah, Dom. You would probably go, wow, he's been a bad goaltender. And I think last night's one of those where, hey, man, if you're going to allow 46 shots, at some point the dam's going to break, and I think that's what happened last night. So, now, are there a couple from last night's game that I think Binnington would tell you, yeah, I'd like to have that one back, especially that third one where he didn't get the rebound. It hit I think he got handcuffed, hit the wrist or something, fell out, and then they put it in on the rebound. Same for the fourth one that they thought was covered up. Yeah, I'm sure he would tell you he'd like to have some of those back. But you know what he did? He kept you in the game early on to allow you to get that lead. Buffalo comes back and ties it, and instead of allowing that another goal to go in, Binnington steps his game up at the right time, allows for Kyrie to take over for a 24-second stretch to give you the lead. I think last night's game, the last game in which he gave up 3 to Minnesota was the Blues are just allowing a ton of shots.
Yeah.
his last 2 games, though he has allowed 7 goals combined, he has faced 83 shots. His save percentage is .916. That's pretty good. That tells me that, okay, that is more of the Blues defense is starting to kind of unravel in the system that they're trying to play, and that Binnington has been fine. I do think there have been more goals lately that have been kind of, oh, I bet he wishes he had that one back. I still think, though, Binnington has been playing good hockey, so I'm not overly concerned about that number.
It's amazing when I bring this up. I really am the Binnington defender where everybody loves to pounce on it. Somebody tweeted to me, Binnington got lucky last night. The Buffalo Sabres missed 4 empty nets and didn't score, and Buffalo didn't have Tage Thompson. What's the team's record when they give up 3 or more goals? I know I'm in the minority with that, but at times when goaltenders go quiet, they go soft, you got to rely on other elements of your game to take over. And that was the offense in this stretch. And it has been the offense in this stretch. And guess what? When you've lost some of these games, which you have, the Kings game, the Sharks game, your offense didn't show up and your goaltending didn't help you out. But last night, your offense showed up to help your goaltending out in the second period, and then your goaltending shut it down in the third period. You got to have a mixture of both, guys. I hate to break it to you, but 82 straight games, you're not going to have a goaltender who is the best goaltender in the National Hockey League. If you don't believe me, go look at Thatcher Demko, who's had his rough stretch. Aiden Hill, who had his rough stretch. It happens in this one. And Grant, if you get this audio, Braden Shen talking about the structure of this team, I think that's the bigger cause for why we're seeing so many goals get past the goaltender lately. It's because the structure of this team has gotten way too loose.
We're going out there and shooting ourselves in the foot and turn over pucks and not playing hard enough, just not tonight, but in general in the second period, and that's something we have to change. Even, 60 minutes, you can't be giving up 45 shots a night, you're relying on your goalies so much. So 2 points is, we'll definitely take it. It's a tight league, but we got lots to clean up here and start, tilting the ice a little bit and taking over games.
And it's what they did in the early portion of the season. They've gotten away from it. Frankly, I feel like the Blues are falling back on their opportunistic moments to where, like, when loose pucks are available, they outskate their opponent, hence the Jordan Kyrou setup for Braden Shen there in that second period. They're using their speed more than they're using their defense to open up opportunities. And if you're winning games, it's not a problem. You need your goaltender to make those saves. But the perfect example of the structure kind of breaking to me last night, T-Bone, was that Peyton Krebs goal that tied it up in the second period. If you remember correctly, puck gets rimmed around the goaltender. The Blues are kind of in that structure, and then they go wide. And while they go wide, you have the centerman who is the one that pinches in the middle, like the one in the middle of a 5 on a die. One pinched up, the other one pinched to the boards. Nobody was covering the middle of the ice, and then you had that high slot in the house shot that Krebs scored to tie things up. That's what you didn't see in the early portion of the season. So when they figure out how to tighten that structure back up, you're going to get back to seeing those 3-1, 3-2 final scores, but you're also going to be seeing both goaltenders have better numbers afterwards because they're not getting those high danger scoring chances.
So I do agree that I think the structure has gotten loose lately. I mean, I just looked this up, and I think it's 5 of their last 8 games they've given up 4 or more goals. That can't be the formula for this team to be winning hockey games this year. They don't have the offense to try and keep up with that, and that's why they are 4-4 in their last 8. And honestly, they're lucky to not be 3-5. You had that wild Arizona Coyotes game. I do agree the structure has gotten looser. I still do think that the goaltending is not completely has 0% blame on the increase in goals allowed that we've seen over the last 8 games. Because, again, I do think there have been goals from Binnington and from
Get over it, man. He's gone.
I know, but I miss him. From Hofer, excuse me, that I look at and I go, man, I bet they want that one back. I mean, it's no coincidence you get three straight games, the goalies get pulled and swapped out. So I tend to agree that the bigger chunk of that pie of blame is the structure around them because it does feel loose. It does feel maybe overly aggressive, which I can understand why they would get into the kind of that habit because they are not a good offensive team at 5-on-5. They're okay. So what do? You try and create turnovers. That's how you can get those odd man rushes. That's how you get the uptick in offense. But this team needs to make sure they stick to that structure. The structure is what's going to be able to help the defense stay improved from last year's team and allow them to have these shots at potentially getting into the playoffs and winning these hockey games in the regular season.
Well, and for those that are curious, if you go look at moneypuck.com, goals saved above expected among goaltenders who have played 10 or more games this season, Jordan Binnington is top 10 again and goals saved above expected still. So despite those rough games, he's still making the saves that analytics believes he shouldn't be making.
And again, I don't think Binnington has been, like, bad lately. I think he's been
nowhere near what last year was.
Yeah, but he's just been off from where he was early on in the year. And, like, you might be saying, well, Tanner, he was awesome at the beginning of the year. What are you talking about? He was playing like a Vezina Trophy guy early on. Yeah, but I think he hasn't been, what would you say, the typical Binnington. I think recently, I think he's been good, but I just don't think he's been, like, so far and beyond good that he's making up for the mistakes in front of him.
He's Tanner Hendrickson. I'm Alex Ferrario. They'll be back in action tomorrow night when they take on the Arizona Coyotes. And coming up in about 15 minutes, it seems like Calgary's blowing it up. That might benefit the Blues. But coming up next, Kyle Gibson was on with the morning show earlier today, and he said there's one element about this rotation that other teams desire to have. We'll explain what that is and if we're believing it next here on 101 ESPN.
What a starting rotation can add to a team is consistency. I don't think a starting rotation can really add confidence over a full season. Maybe for one game if you've got your if you've got your stopper on the mound, okay. As a manager or a pitching coach or an offense or a defense, when you know what you're going to get out of that guy on the middle of the mound every single day, it really can add consistency to a team. An offense knows they don't need to score 7 or 8 today. A defense knows they're going to be in the game. That consistency can do a lot for a team.
So that's new Cardinals pitcher Kyle Gibson, who was on the opening drive earlier today. If you missed that interview, you can go back and listen to it up on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com. It's presented by Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers. But do so once you get done listening to us until 2 o'clock in the fast lane, once you get done with that at 6 o'clock. But what Kyle Gibson said there basically felt like he was saying what the front office told him when they signed him. We want consistency in this rotation. We want our offense to know, like, hey, you're going to have a pitcher who's in this game for 6 innings, and he's going to give you competitive outings, and he's going to involve the defense, which is fine. And frankly, hearing him say that, T-Bone, it's what you didn't have last year. It's why last year stunk so bad. Because every single time we were like, man, is this guy going to give you 4 innings? Or are we going to be talking about the bullpen in here? So Gibson is absolutely correct. But there's a difference in getting consistency from your rotation and getting confidence with that consistency in your rotation. And that confidence in the consistency is still what I question. Because, sure, I know that Kyle Gibson, Lance Lynn are going to be available every 5th day to me. Probably give me 5 or more innings. But are they going to give me 5 or more innings where my offense is going to have to score 7 or 8 runs? That still remains to be the problem.
Yeah, I think there is some truth to what Kyle Gibson said today about a rotation and providing consistency. And that does, I know he said it may not provide, a lot of confidence in a team or anything like that. I think it does, because the consistency can then allow you. I think the biggest part of the consistency in the rotation that he's referring to is it then allows you to set up the bullpen very well, which was an issue they had last year because they just had to burn through relievers constantly because they weren't getting enough consistent outings. But it is a good thing when you look at a rotation and you can say, hey, we can pencil Miles Michaelis in for 6 innings and 3 runs or less today. That sounds fantastic compared to what we saw last year with the rotation. The thing that I do kind of agree with you, and this is why I'm a little more skeptical as the way the rotation is constructed as of today. We'll see if anything changes. The offseason still has 3 months. My God, 3 months before spring training.
It's okay, man. We got hockey.
Yay.
Hey.
I'm a baseball guy, man. The thing that I'm questioning of this consistency is how effective is the consistency, to your point. Because, okay, if I have a Lance Lynn that goes out there and gives me 6-7 innings, but he gives up 4 or 5 runs a start, how benefactory is that to the Cardinals? How many more wins do you have this year because of that? Now, quite a bit, because this rotation is quite a bit better than last year's squad. But I understand what they were going for. They were going for innings. They wanted innings. They wanted consistent innings. They wanted to know what they were getting basically every night when Kyle Gibson and Lance Lynn and Sonny Gray took them out. Sonny Gray, I don't question. What I do question is Michaelis, Lynn, Gibson. Sure, they're going to eat innings, but how effective are those innings? How consistent are they? Are they going to – and I think this is the thing that was most troublesome for the Cardinals last year. And if I said that consistently they give up, if Gibson gives up 4 runs in a 6-inning start consistently, that's fantastic, long as those 4 runs aren't in the first inning. Because what was the issue with this team last year? Last year they'd be down 3-0 before they picked up the bats, and that was just a backbreaker for the squad to where it was, oh boy, here we go again. We already know right now we've got to score 7 runs. You give up 3 or 4 through a 6-inning outing. At least maybe you give up maybe 1 in the 2nd inning, and you get your bats in your hands before you're looking at the scoreboard and you're trailing. That is the thing for me with this rotation. Is the innings that these guys cover, is it effective enough to win? But not only that, can they get off to where the team is not off to such slow starts in games early on?
Well, yeah, and last season it always felt like we were asking for more. And yes, of course, you're asking for more innings, but it felt like you were asking for more dominance. You were asking for more ability to stop things from getting worse. And we talk about this with the Blues last year, right? The snowball effect. When one loss would happen, it would pile on. Last year, it felt like every single time another guy would take the mound, you'd be like, is he going to stop this from bleeding? And then you'd get 3 innings and he'd get yanked and you'd be talking about having to come back in that one. Okay, well, can Steven Matz stop this bleeding? Nope, he's not on his game yet. Can Zach Thompson do it? Nope, he's not ready for this yet. Can one of these guys stop the bleeding? I do have faith in that. Like Lance Lynn has shown the ability to do that. Kyle Gibson has shown the ability to do that.
I don't think that when you say stop the bleeding, do you mean in a game or do you mean in the terms
in
of
a schedule, in a week?
Yeah,
so if you lose a game one night, the next guy on the mound, can he go out there and give your bullpen some time off? Can he give your offense an opportunity to feel like they're in this game?
That is where I just don't know. And what I mean by that is, okay, if, for example, let's say, and we're running through a big hypothetical here, the Cardinals have lost 3 in a row. Sonny Gray ends up losing his start. They end up losing the game that Michaelis starts. Then they lose the game that Matt starts. And he had to go through the bullpen early because Matt didn't eat up a ton of innings. So now the bullpen's a little bit tired going into this new series. Is Lynn that guy? And the reason I ask that is because when I think of a guy that's a stopper, I think of the guy that says, sure, I'm going to go 7 innings, 6, 7, 8 innings tonight, but I'm only going to give up 1 earned run. When I think of Lynn, he could go 6, 7 innings, but is he going to give up less than 4 or 5 earned runs? Is that a stopper? That's an innings eater, but is that a stopper? You can still lose a game if you're giving up 4 or 5 runs. In fact, I kind of expect you to lose a game if you're giving up 4 or 5 runs. That is kind of my question is, okay, sure, he's going to eat innings, but does that mean a whole lot if he's given up 3, 4, 5 earned runs in that time period? That's my biggest question about the way that they built the back end of the rotation. That's why, though, when I say they need a Glass now, they need a Cease, they need if Gilbert happened to be available, they need a guy at the front of the rotation.
Yeah.
Why? Not just for the playoffs. Yes, they do. They don't have a 1-2 punch for a playoff series right now. They've got a 1, and that's it in Sonny Gray. They need those guys to help be stoppers. That is the biggest reason for it.
And that's why I'm skeptical, because I think you've got one guy, and one guy means in the other 4 games, you might be in a 4-game losing streak. And what happens if Sonny Gray deals with an injury, God forbid, because everybody's going to go through that. That's where that other one comes into play. Another thing Kyle Gibson said, kind of ties into what we're talking about here, but he mentioned when he signed with this team and when he pitched against them last year, he saw reason for hope.
I had the fortunate, struggle of facing them. They were a tough team to prepare for. They had a really good offense, and I think maybe pitching didn't quite go as they wanted, but they still have a really good offense and a lot of really good defenders on the team. And those are 2 things that are really important, obviously, to winning games. And I think once they've obviously put a pretty importance and a premium here on adding a few starting pitchers, and I don't know what else we're going to do, but this is a team that really wasn't far off.
Were they that far off, though? Because I agree. The offense was top-notch. Offense was one of the best in the National League and almost in baseball. We talked about that. But is it good enough to overcome a pitching staff that's not there for you? Is it good enough to overcome a bullpen that might not be upgraded? Because to me, they've built this team, at least as it stands right now, following these winter meetings, follow the rest of the offseason, I could eat my words immediately. But it feels like they built this team that says, we'll be good enough until we get to the trade deadline, then we'll have to make an upgrade. But I don't buy that this team would make an upgrade. And even with a great offense, I'm still not sure you're in that position that he says you're not that far off.
It depends on the upgrade. Because, if they need a back-end starter, they'll make that upgrade. We've seen that upgrade. They need a bullpen arm, they'll make that upgrade. We've seen them go get a bullpen arm. Now, do they need an ace at the deadline? Okay, that I'll buy your skepticism because I've never seen them make that kind of a move. I agree with what Kyle Gibson said, though, and I know I'm coming off as probably a negative guy in this segment because I am skeptical of this rotation still, but I don't think they're far off. Now, I think they were approaching this offseason as, hey, we're not far off from winning the NL Central, which, okay, as we've seen, that doesn't do a whole lot for you.
But how much does that change once the Cubs do things?
Depends on what they do, but you're right. If they're clearly in on Ohtani, reports say that they're still one of the 4 or 5 teams that remain in on Ohtani. I think then the conversation can shift, but right now, as things stand, it does feel like they said we're not that far off from winning the NL Central. And, okay, that's fair. If you want to build that way, fine, but you'll be golfing in the middle of October.
It's a great time to golf,
But I also believe they're not that far off from being a true, I don't want to say a dominant playoff team, but a team that you can look at instead of going, okay, if I squint, maybe they can go on a run.
Yeah.
No, I think you get one more. And look, I don't know if they're going to do this. I'm skeptical of this. But if you go out there and you trade for a Glasnow or a Cease, you are building the proper way to build a October baseball team. And if you get, I don't even know if it has to be 2 relievers at that point because you're doing so much in terms of making all these moves, bringing in 4 starters. But if you go out and you get a high-leverage bullpen arm, whoever it might be, maybe it is bringing back Jordan Hicks, then yes, you have a bullpen that I can look at and go, okay, I like some of the pieces there. That looks like maybe an October bullpen. And if you have to add to that at the deadline, there's always bullpen arms available. But then you've got 2 guys that are leading. You've got the 1 and the 2, the 1-2 combo punch that you need when you get to October if you bring in another starter. That, to me, is why they're not that far off because they can make it work if they choose to do it.
I'm also skeptical on the defensive side of things. Like, I know their defense kind of rounded out, but I still don't know where the center field is at, even though if it is Tommy Edman. Tommy Edman was fine there. Catching, of course, is going to be a question mark no matter what. And frankly, I think second base is too. You got Mason Wynn. You're good on the corners. The outfield, you're assuming you're going to be good with. But I still think that that's questionable. But again, all of this could be changed if you have a successful winter meetings. And that's what the Cardinals will try and accomplish when they're out there in Nashville this coming weekend. He's Tanner Hendrickson, Graham Francis. I'm Alex Ferrario. Coming up next, Elliot Friedman on the 32 Thoughts podcast talked about the Calgary Flames. They made a move last night, which signifies they look like they're blowing it up. Is that an opportunity for the Blues to pounce? We'll discuss next. And, I got a Ferrario 5 for everybody going into the weekend. All that next here on 101 ESPN. Alex Ferrario with you to talk about my dentist, 100 West Dental. Look, everybody has anxiety about going to the dentist. I've had it for the longest time after my dentist didn't do the proper due diligence to make sure I was healthy, missed a tumor. I lost 7 teeth, and now I've got implants in my mouth. And frankly, I'm afraid to go to the dentist, but that stopped the moment I walked through the doors at 100 West Dental because they took that anxiety away because they talk to you about what they're there for. It's the preventative procedure, making sure that your mouth and your overall health are taken care of in the long run. Early detection, not just making sure that your teeth are fine, no cavities, and you walk on. Sure, they do that, but they make sure that, do you have bleeding gums? Do you have plaque buildup? Because all of that stuff, if you have it, it's going into your overall system, and that's not how you stay healthy. So get out to 100 West Dental off of Manchester. Tell them I sent you, and when you do, and you mention 101 ESPN and my name, listen to this. You're going to get their White Christmas White Teeth promo. They're going to be giving away free teeth whitening kits when you mention 101 ESPN and you mention my name. You get a $1,000 off in an Invisalign package. So what more could you ask for going into the holiday season than healthy, good-looking teeth? 100 West Dental, 100westdental.com.
Grant Francis here with a SportsCenter update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. The Blues put up 6 on the Sabres last night as they beat them 6-4 and remain perfect against the Eastern Conference this season. 5-0-0 this season against Eastern Conference teams. Jake Neighbours and Braden Shen each had 2 goals last night. Blues now 12-9-1 on the season, 25 points. Good for 4th in the Central. Only 1 point behind the Winnipeg Jets for 3rd place in the Central. And they'll be back at it tomorrow night in Arizona to take on the Coyotes, a team that's only 1 point behind the Blues in the Central. That pregame will start at 7 o'clock. Puck drop at 8 right here on your home for the Blues, 101 ESPN. And then tonight here on 101 ESPN, we'll have some college football. The Pac-12 championship between Oregon and Washington. You can hear that pregame starting right after the Fast Lane at 6 o'clock. I'm Grant Francis. This SportsCenter update's been brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
I think some teams thought that meant, the Flames are going to wait. This is a signal, no. They're ready to talk. They're ready to listen. If you want to do some business with them, you better get on the phone and call.
That was Elliot Friedman on the 32 Thoughts podcast alongside Jeff Merrick and Tanner Hendrickson, Grant Francis. I'm Alex Ferrario. They're talking about the move that took place with Calgary and Vancouver last night. And if you missed it, Nikita Zadorov, who we talked about here in St. Louis a little bit, was traded to the Vancouver Canucks. It was a pending UFA defenseman, as he was one of the guys that said he didn't really want to resign there, and so he was traded. But the part that struck me, T-Bone and Grant, was he was traded for a 5th-round pick in this year's draft and a 3rd-round pick in next year's draft. And that's a defenseman who it was reported about 8 to 10 teams are interested in, and that was the best offer that Calgary deemed available, and they traded him in division, which does not seem to happen very often. And now that Elliot Friedman said that, it backs up what my theory was yesterday. Calgary's ready to blow it up. Calgary, Craig Conroy, even though they're starting to play better hockey, it seems he recognizes that some guys aren't going to be willing to re-sign there. They're in this weird purgatory of, do we start a retool? Do we try and keep moving it forward? And with pending UFAs of Noah Hannafin and Christopher Tanev, a couple of other defensemen, and then with Elias Lindholm, it seems they're open for business. The Blues got to get on the phone. And I know you don't have...
But we're retooling.
I know, we're retooling. Sure, fine. You got an issue defensively. I think we all can agree with that one. You've got somebody who is 26 years old, who the report from Pierre LeBrun was willing to sign an 7-8-year contract worth about $7.5 million AAV, and still at least reported willing to sign it, and Calgary Flames trade him. That's Noah Hannafin. This is the guy, and I know I've sat on my pedestal, and I've talked all about how this guy makes a ton of sense for the Blues. I don't know how you get it done. It doesn't seem like they're going to want the world to trade him, hence the 3rd and 5th round picks. This is a guy that I think the Blues should be aggressive in targeting, because it fixes this retool fast enough. It's very clear they wanted to get a defenseman in their top 4 in the offseason trying to trade for Travis Sanheim. Now you got another opportunity to get one before he hits the free agent market.
Well, 100%. I mean, it was clear this offseason that Army felt like the goal of the offseason, it wasn't to get just Kevin Hayes. Like, the goal, though they needed another guy in their top 9, was, can we get a guy that we can pair with Parayko? I said this at the time when the trade fell through, or when they just acquired Kevin Hayes, of, man, it's clear that Army views that the number one thing that they need to accomplish during this retool is finding who Parayko's partner is. They find who Parayko's partner is, I think that's when you can start to have the conversations of they're starting to begin this exit of the retool. Now, the question that I would ask you, because in the offseason it's a little bit different, you know,
right,
because for all we know, there may not have been a bidding war. There may not have been a bidding war had Hannafin been available. But now that we're at this point,
everybody's going to want it.
Every team that has defensive issues and wants to get creative, they can make 4.95 fit under the cap. And by the deadline, it's going to be like $2 million because of the way the system works and the money.
But Calgary's not willing to eat money on that. So the other thing Elliot Friedman said, they're not willing to eat money.
When it's just $2 million at that point in the year,
you're
it's
right.
not too bad. A lot of teams can make that work, and then you can sign with the extension, or he can sign the extension before being traded, and you can plan that all out with the cap going up. The question that I want to ask is, if you're the Blues and you are, let's say they're in the same spot they're in now, whatever the point total is, who cares? But they're in the wild card picture. You're in this retool. You say Hannafin's him. We like Hannafin. We want to trade for Hannafin. You get to the trade deadline. You call Calgary, and they say, here's what we want, whatever it is. But then there are more teams that come in, and they create this bidding war. Is Noah Hannafin, in the middle of a retool for the St. Louis Blues, worth saying we've got to win a bidding war to go and acquire him? Even if that means we got to give up something we're uncomfortable with, he is the guy that we have to, and I mean have to in all bold capital letters, have to go get.
It's a good question because there is a puke point, I believe, with the Blues here. And that's part of the reason why I would get on the phone now rather than wait till the trade deadline, because maybe make a really nice-looking offer to Calgary now so you can get them faster before other teams jump into the race, because the one thing other teams are going to want to try and trade are guys that might be pending UFAs also. I saw somebody pop up the potential for Boston to trade for him and trade a guy like Jake DeBrusk. Well, Jake DeBrusk's a UFA after this season, and if Calgary's blowing it up, you want future, you don't want right now. I'm not touching a Snuggerud and a Dvorsky because I think those are pieces to your retool.
Agreed.
But everything else is on the table. And here's the thing. Calgary just traded. I mean, Zadorov is not what Hannafin is. Hannafin is a top pair defenseman. Zadorov, in my opinion, is a third pair defenseman, at best a second pair defenseman. They got a future third and a fifth. You've got 2 seconds and 2 thirds in this upcoming draft. You've got some pieces, Boldukes, the Deans, that are good to have for a team that's trying to retool, but also even better chips to try and expedite this retool. And maybe I'm off on this. Maybe Hannafin doesn't match what the future goal is for the Blues. But this is a guy that I get as close to the puke point as possible and say, I got to do this. Because you've been searching for somebody. This screams so much like the Jay Bouwmeester trade of years past. Because you had a top defenseman and you were like, we got to get somebody who could play with him. And you went out there and you made the trade for Jay Bouwmeester and you got him. And then you locked him up. You've got Colton Parayko. I know you can argue all you want if you look at Dom's piece to talk about how Parayko's not that guy. But you've got 2 really, 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 really solid right-handed defensemen. And you're in search of somebody in that left-handed side in the top 4. And that's where this Hannafin comes into play. He's 26 years old. If you sign an 8-year contract with him, you're talking about being there until he's 34. Your defensive core is taken care of. And I know the next question is, well, how do you make the salary cap work? If he's making $7.5 next year, you can make it work. But this is a guy that, although I'm not going to go past my puke point, which is a Dvorsky and a Snuggerud, I think you do have some of the pieces that could get it there before that puke point hits, but you got to do it sooner rather than later.
And you're okay if they want a first-round pick? Because I think they're going to want a first. I know you mentioned 2 seconds.
Because a first-round pick, if you're picking 18 to 25, let's say they get into a wild card spot and they get bounced, it's a good pick to have, but it's a pick that's probably not going to do anything for you for the next 3 to 4 years. Would you rather have somebody who makes your team significantly better now, or would you rather wait and see what that draft pick comes into play for the next 3 to 4 years?
Yeah, and what will be interesting, and this is why I brought up the bidding war thing, is because there may be a team. The only reason the Blues trade for him is they know they can re-sign him. You don't trade for him as a rental, even if you are a playoff team. Because if you're the Blues, it just doesn't make sense to give up assets in a retool to go get a rental. If the Blues trade for Hannafin, the goal would be trade him, sign him to an extension, or he signs the extension first, and then you trade for him and you've got him for 7, 8, 9 years, whatever the deal ends up being that he signs for. But the reason that I brought up the bidding war is I could see some team that may need defensive help say, man, we're just a Hannafin piece away. Who cares if he wants to re-sign with us? He's a guy that is that all in, push the chips in, let's go for him. And that's where I just don't know how the Blues would view it, because they may think, okay, we probably can re-sign Hannafin, but if somebody else is offering up a better package that Calgary really likes, are we going to really counter with another offer that we think could be maybe not past the puke point, but very close to it? That's why I just find this Blues trade deadline to be so fascinating. And I think Hannafin is the guy for them. Like, I know we've been banging this Hannafin drum for the last 2 years. I do like the idea of acquiring him. It's just I don't know I don't know what they're willing to go in terms of pushing chips in for him.
Yeah, and I mean, look, if somebody's going to come in with an NHL player, then you're not going to be able to outbid that. Somebody texted and said, okay, genius, how are you going to make the trade work? Look, you've got ways to move salary out. We've talked about Verano. We've talked about Marco Scandella. But this trade only works if you're willing to move on from guys, and if Calgary wants guys like a Bolduc and draft picks. And this is the part that I just don't know. Calgary basically told you yesterday that we're not looking for things that help us now. We're looking for things that help us 3 to 5 years from now.
See, I don't know if they sent that message yesterday. I think they kind of did.
You could have gotten a better package for Zadorov than a 3rd and a 5th round pick from your interdivision rival.
I mean, apparently they couldn't because they took that deal.
But they couldn't because they didn't want to retain salary. Toronto was willing to give them something better. They didn't want to eat salary.
I think the other problem that they had, too, was, okay, well, Zadorov said he doesn't want to be here. Like, you start to lose leverage.
Oh, absolutely.
Because if you're Vancouver and they say, we want a 2nd-round pick from you, well, why? I'm not going to give you that. He doesn't want to be there. If you want to let him walk or you want to send him elsewhere.
But you know that other teams are bidding in that one, which is why that trade was just so odd to me, because Toronto was very, very vocal about wanting that player for their team. I forgot there was another team that was in the rumor mill. The Islanders, I think, were in the rumor mill for something like that, too. Maybe it was the Rangers. But there's a lot of teams that were pushing for something like this. The problem really just becomes, do you have the pieces, and do you feel like now is the time to push your eggs into that basket? The reason I think it is because it's the area that you're weakest in.
Agreed.
You've got a lot of forwards in your pipe system that are going to be competing for your roster within the next year or two. Dvorsky, Snuggerud, Bolduc, Dean. You're good on the forward, on top of guys that you already have in place. There's not much in your defensive system other than a Buchinger, a Gaudette, a Leo Loof, but these guys aren't projected to be a top pair defenseman. They're projected to be fringe guys.
And, again, if you do acquire him, the solution is here for the next – how many more years Parayko have on his contract?
He's here for the next 7, I think.
You have your top pairing defense for the next, whatever it is, 6, 7, 8 years, because Hanifin would be signed to a contract extension. Parayko's already on his contract extension. You know what the top pairing is here in St. Louis for the next 7 years. This isn't like, the Cardinals where we talk about trading for Cease. Well, okay, you acquire Cease. You know what the top of your rotation looks like for just 2 years. That's 2. This is 7 years that we're talking about here. That's why if he would sign an extension, he makes all the sense in the world that you bring him in here, you pair him with Colton Parayko, and you're right. It is the most glaring need, I would say, in terms of in this retool. What do they need? Well, they clearly need a couple top 6 wingers, or 1 or 2 guys, 1 in the top 9 probably. They need someone that can help on the power play. They need a top pairing guy to pair with Colton Parayko. Well, that one is clearly number 1 for me. Boom, you can check that off the list, and then those other pieces that I just mentioned, those are a little bit easier to figure out in this retool.
Now, that's the future look at this one, but I got a Ferrario 5 for you both. You can tell me if you like this one.
I don't know if we have time.
Oh, no, we got time. It's just a junk drawer. We can move past it. I've got a 5-player list of how the Blues can add to their offensive top 9 by making a trade. Grant, hit the open.
You're listening to BK and Ferrario. It's time for the Ferrario 5, a top 5 list of very random things. So, Ferrario, give us your top 5.
Okay, I will move fast through this because I just looked down and I'm pulling a BK right now. But that's fine. He's not here. Somebody's got to screw up the clock at some point. Number 5 on this list. So in my mind, we've talked about how the Blues need somebody in their top 9, somebody who can help on the power play, somebody who brings a little bit more Craig Berube style to the game rather than what they've been trying to find with Jakub Vrana. Maybe it's Vrana for these guys. Maybe it's something else. But number 5 on this list, and Grant, you're the expert on this team, the New York Islanders. Oliver Wahlstrom. This is a forward, a young forward, who's an RFA after this season. Seems like he's fallen out of grace with the New York Islanders, and the New York Islanders are still a competitive team. They need offense. Could you trade a Vrana for a Wahlstrom like this? Part of me wonders if they'd be interested.
With Wahlstrom, I think you're right, Alex. I think he was expected to be better than he has been for the Islanders, and he is a young player, so I don't mind this in the Ferrario 5, especially at number 5, but I think he's sort of, and maybe he just has to go through that growing process as well, but he's sort of similar to Jordan Kyrou in the fact that he just hasn't gotten there yet. And I don't know if I'd want to bank on him to be a player for the future long term, but for right now, to try it out like they did with Jakub Vrana, I wouldn't mind it.
Yeah, and he might be one of those guys that just needs a change of scenery like a Jakub Vrana. Number 4 on this list, he's been in the rumor mill also for the Ottawa Senators, Matthew Joseph. This is a guy who played for Tampa, was traded to the Ottawa Senators a few years ago when that Nick Paul trade took place. This guy might be more of a glorified fourth-line player, but he's also somebody who has shown the offensive upside as a fourth-line player for the Tampa Bay Lightning. I don't know if they would just be willing in the Vrana side, but it's a player that they know they'll have to move if they want to sign Shane Pinto. This is a guy that I think matches a Craig Berube style, and he's 26 years old.
I could see this one. I mean, Ottawa's bad last year, and he finished at a +5. And again, plus-minus not a great stat to look at, but seems like he's responsible defensively. Like you said, 12-goal, 13-goal upside. He's done that in the past. This one's kind of interesting.
Number 3 on this list, I've talked about him before, San Jose Sharks' Anthony Duclair.
Oh, I thought you were going to go Mike Hoffman.
No, not Mike Hoffman or not Barabanov, as our guy BK likes to talk about. I like Anthony Duclair. You'd have to do some finagling, and I don't even know if San Jose would be interested for Vrana for Duclair, but he's obviously not in their future. Do you add something to it to bring in a guy who has shown the 30-goal plateau when he was with the Florida Panthers? So Anthony Duclair is one of them. The top 2. The Seattle Kraken with Kyler Yamamoto. This is a guy that Edmonton couldn't re-sign in the offseason. Seattle jumped in. Third-line winger, but a guy who does have the offensive ability and is good on the defensive side of the puck. And the number 1 on this list is Sean Monahan from the Montreal Canadiens. This not only offers offense, he's a UFA after this season, and you get a little leadership core into that as well. So those are my top 2.
I like the final, not just the final 2, but the final 3. I do like the Anthony Duclair idea because he has been a 30-goal scorer. I don't think you do that by accident. The Yamamoto one's interesting. I do like him as well. I mean, he's scored 20 goals in the past. And then the Shamanaya one as well. I mean, he's the kind of guy you're looking for. Because you bring him in, maybe you re-sign him, but maybe you're just looking for kind of a rental because you do have a Snuggerud, a Dvorsky that are getting ready to come up. Maybe Bolduc's ready by the time next year, or a Dean. Like, I wouldn't mind if the Blues said, you know what, let's do trade for something. Like, if it just costs a second-round pick for Monahan, yeah, why not? Go ahead and do it. Bring him in. Maybe he's just a rental, but maybe he helps you out a little bit. Maybe you win a playoff series. Yeah,
well, and look, Monahan, too. I mean, you could bring him in and look at it and say, like, hey, if he works out for us, maybe we give him Sammy Blais money and he could provide some offense, some leadership ability. Somebody texted in and said, flawed premise, nobody wants Vrana right now. It doesn't have to just be Vrana. You could also just waive Vrana and trade something to bring in a top 9 forward. But don't be so sure that nobody wants a player who has 30-goal potential. He just might not work in this system where another team says, hey, we put him on our number 1 power play unit in our system, and he works out a lot better than what we expected. So that's my Ferrario 5. Sean Monahan, number 1. Kyler Yamamoto, number 2. Anthony Duclair, number 3. Matthew Joseph, number 4. And Oliver Wahlstrom, number 5. Let's take a break. We'll come back and dive into the junk drawer here on 101 ESPN.
Open it up. The Junk Drawer with BK and Ferrario.
Brought to you by Fenton Bar and Grill. Best trashed wings in Missouri. Dine in, carry out, 7 days a week.
Alongside Grant Francis and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Alex Ferrario here at the E&B Granite Studios at Centene Community Ice Center. We're live on YouTube at 101 ESPN STL, sponsored by the Air Alliance team, as we dive into the junk drawer and we hand it over to T-Bone.
Alex, would you have interest in buying a house that was on its own island, just on the south side of the Florida Keys?
Hell yes. You're telling me I could be somewhere where nobody talks to me? Absolutely. But it sounds like a lot of money.
Yeah, it is a lot of money.
Okay, I'm out then.
You got $2.5 million just laying around?
No, I already can't afford my own freaking mortgage, let alone what that one would be.
So there is a place. It is pretty Joe Rock, a.k.a. Seashell Key. This is where this house is listed. It's for $2.5 million. It is 9,190 square feet is the island size, which is pretty good. I mean, it looks like a decent-sized island. This house was featured on HGTV back in 2014.
Of course it was.
But a house has been built because that house was destroyed back in 2017 because of one of the hurricanes that came through.
No, I don't want to go there anymore.
That was my main reason. I was like, man, this whole living on an island thing sounds great. It's connected to the shore electricity, the city water.
Yeah, you didn't tell me that there's a hurricane spot coming at me.
I was like, okay, like if I had this kind of money, I'd love to live on an island.
You know who I'm jealous of? And this is going to sound so weird. I'm deep in blacklist right now. I'm like 2 seasons away. I'm jealous of the people that go into witness protection that Raymond Reddington looks at and be like, I'm going to send you to a private island where nobody will ever be able to find you, and you've got an endless amount of income coming your way.
See, now that I wouldn't want to do.
Witness protection sounds fun.
No, because there's a chance you still get discovered
and killed. Yes, I understand that.
This, living on an island, it wouldn't be too bad. I envision a yard for when I grow up, or when I grow up.
Yard, you're gonna have a pool
when I'm older, So
the ocean.
I can play wiffle ball with my kids if they want to play football in the backyard, grilling, a pool, like you said. Hey, this island whole thing, don't get me wrong, it would be cool. But, not having a yard where if I hit a wiffle ball and went into the ocean,
just get another one. And then luckily, one of your pet sharks will bring it back to you. Probably chewed up, but you could go for a swim and get that wiffle ball.
I wouldn't mind this because you're not, it doesn't say how far off you are of land. If this said, you're 100 miles from land, okay, I'm out. But if it's 10, I'm totally in.
I could promise everybody listening that if I ever had that type of money, the first thing I would purchase is an island, a private island with a house. Not pay off debt.
Do you want to be close to land or no?
I'd be close enough, I have a boat that can take me to land.
A 10-minute,
But it would be far enough out so that people can't contact me.
I'm in.
Timo, we should go into this together, but you can't live there. I only going to live there. He's Tanner Hendrickson. I'm Alex Ferrario. Coming up next, college football playoff weekend is about to get this much more exciting. Who's the team that causes the most havoc? And Mizzou, sounds like we might have the preview of what the bowl game is going to look like. We'll explain that next here on 101 ESPN. Alongside Tanner Hendrickson and Grant Francis, I'm Alex Ferrario. No BK with us. He is out on vacation. He will be back on Tuesday. And on Monday, we will be talking about hopefully some chaos around college football, T-Bone, because now we enter the college football championship games and, of course, the college football playoff rankings, which already people were discussing. But, man, does it become a lot more entertaining after this weekend. You've got Oregon and Washington going head-to-head. You got Alabama and Georgia, Florida State and Louisville. You got Texas and Oklahoma State, Michigan and Iowa, although that one's not really any competition. But when it comes to the outcomes of these college football championship games, T-Bone, which one really causes the most damage in the rankings? Because to me, Alabama's the one that destroys everything. If Alabama beats Georgia, that top 6, that top 4 is going to look significantly different if, say, Georgia pulls out the victory.
I like that one because if you get Alabama that wins and Texas holds on as well, it's a very tough argument to keep Georgia in the playoff scenario, to be honest with you, because you'd have Bama with the head-to-head win. And if you're Texas, you're looking at that going, well, wait a minute, we beat Alabama.
Yes.
So if Bama beat Georgia, and that means them as well. And then who knows what the chaos is that could occur from the Pac-12 championship game that is tonight, which is just going to be an awesome football game. To me, it's Florida State. If they blow out Louisville, and I think it has to be a blowout win for them because, again, they are the team that should be viewed as have played one football game. And I know that sounds harsh, but they just lost the Jordan Travis 2 weeks ago. They're playing their backup quarterback, who was not that impressive against a bad Florida team that didn't even qualify for a bowl, which is hard to do as an SEC squad. If they blow out Louisville this weekend, I don't know what you do if you're the College Football Playoff Committee, and including if Alabama, forget if Alabama wins, but if Texas wins, let's say, because I would argue that Texas is still the better football team because they have their starting quarterback. They've got a really good roster. Their one loss was to an Oklahoma team that now you look at it, it's not as bad. It's not as quote-unquote good of a loss, but they're still a good squad. The Florida State team, you just won the ACC. What's that really mean? There's not anybody that's great in the ACC. Louisville's a good team, but, they lose this game here to Florida State. They're going to drop to, around the 20 range into the college football playoff rankings. I think Florida State winning big this weekend throws everything up into chaos because if they win by, 3, if they lose, they're out. That's the easy part. Okay, thank God we don't have to worry about putting in a backup quarterback. We can say that they're out of the playoff.
And I don't even – it has to be winning big. Even if you win by a little and Louisville keeps it close, you don't deserve to be in the college football playoffs, regardless if you're undefeated, especially for how the other teams perform.
But I will say this, I think the committee put themselves in a tough spot because they are number 4 going into that game tomorrow.
Yeah,
so
right.
Whether they win,
whereas Oregon's number 5, and if Oregon beats Washington, now you're talking about them.
Had the committee put anybody, and I mean truly, well, not just anybody, but anybody that was maybe had they put Texas or Alabama or Oregon into that number 4 spot, you basically said by that going into championship weekend, Florida State has to win big. What they're telling you right now by putting them at number 4 is Florida State's got to win.
Yeah.
Well, okay, but what if it is absolute ugly football and they win? They go 13-0. They are 13-0. They haven't lost a football game, and they are in a Power 5 conference, and they're ACC champions. What do you do if you're the College Football Playoff Committee? You basically told us this is the preview of the scenarios is what has to happen. And you basically just said, yeah, Florida State's essentially got to win. I think Florida State winning is the most crazy potential outcomes we could see, and it just throws everything into flux if you're the College Football Playoff.
So let's go down this path then. Let's say Georgia beats Alabama, Michigan beats Iowa. That's your 1-2.
Yeah.
If Florida State beats Louisville, and it's only by a little, if Oregon beats Washington, and that one's by a little,
and Texas wins.
Oregon should overtake Florida State because you're a lower seed team beating a Washington team, even if it's close, which would move Washington to number 4.
Yeah, well, then it comes down to who do you put in, Washington, Florida State, or Texas? And Texas has their best win is over Alabama, who is now at 2 losses.
What's Florida State's?
So there's just probably Louisville. Louisville would be their best win.
Same.
And Washington's best win is Oregon. To me, Washington would be in.
Washington deserves that.
But I'm not sure that the College Football Playoff Committee is going to look at it that way. And don't forget, you still have a one-loss Ohio State team that would be sitting on the outside going, hey, our loss was to Michigan.
Over here.
They're the number 2 team. Come on, we want to be in. Florida State's got a backup quarterback. Florida State winning is truly, to me, the worst outcome for the College Football Playoff Committee. Bama winning is also a bad one because then you've really got the debate of, do we put Georgia in over Texas?
Yeah.
That's tough. Man, I would hate to be on that playoff committee looking at that going, my God, we got to put Florida State into this. Washington's clearly a better football team. Ohio State's clearly a better football team.
Imagine if Bama wins, Florida State wins, Oregon wins, and Texas wins.
What do you do?
Oh, my God. What a nightmare.
And by the way, we're running through these scenarios. I don't think most of these are going to happen. I actually think Florida State probably loses this weekend. But I just love the idea of this being chaos. Honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if, selection show is on Sunday. I wouldn't be shocked if the playoff commission went, we need another day.
Yeah, let's do one more of these.
We need 24 more hours. We still haven't come up to a clean decision. This is a nightmare for us. We don't know what to do.
Give me a live look into the analytics room of guys just crunching numbers and trying to figure out how it works.
I think this has the potential to just be I want to call it an awesome debate. I know a lot of these fan bases will be just absolutely ticked off. I think it's great for us that are sitting on the outside going, hey, man, Mizzou's got a New Year's Six bowl. We know they're good. Illinois, we're not making a bowl. I know I'm good. I don't have to watch bowl season this year.
Speaking of those New Year's Six bowl, Kirk Bowles, I believe his name is. He is a columnist for the Austin American-Statesman in Austin, Texas, which essentially is kind of like the Post-Dispatch in Austin. He reported yesterday that, according to one of his sources, if Texas doesn't make the college football playoffs, that you can expect a Missouri versus Texas Cotton Bowl game. And the scenarios he pointed out is essentially it's going to be tough for Texas to make this college football playoffs. So all likelihood is a Cotton Bowl matchup between Missouri and Texas. And frankly, T-Bone, that's the best outcome that I could have asked for. I would be so excited to watch that matchup compared to any other matchups of a New Year's Six bowl game.
Yeah, I think Texas-Missouri would be an awesome bowl game because that Texas squad, you just saw them beat Alabama, okay? And we're going to see Bama go head-to-head with Georgia.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm kind of running through this scenario is because Mizzou was in that game with Georgia, and we'll see how Bama fares against them. I think Mizzou is kind of in that ilk of Alabama. There's a reason they're only 1 spot behind them, 2 spots behind Texas. They could go head-to-head with Texas, and I think it would be a great football game. You would get to see an awesome matchup that you haven't seen, an old-fashioned Big 12 rivalry, or not rivalry, but an old-fashioned Big 12 game. Yeah, I would love to see Missouri play Texas. I'm still rooting for Tulane just so I can hear BK complain about it, but going up against Texas would be a whole lot of fun.
Well, it starts tonight. You got the Pac-12 championship this evening, and then all weekend you've got the Big 12, SEC, Big 10, and ACC championships. Coming up in 15 minutes, we'll have One's Got to Go. You send us 3 scenarios. We'll tell you which one has to go. 314-399-9646. But coming up next, one scenario that's in the NHL right now is if you're an above 500 team after the month of November, you are in one heck of a good position to be a playoff team. We'll explain that and try and explain what the hell is going on in the NHL coming up next year on 101 ESPN. So the month of November is officially wrapped up for the Blues, and a Blues team that picked up their 12th victory of the season, 12-9-1 overall. 3 games above 500, T-Bone, and alongside Tanner Hendrickson and Graham Francis, I'm Alex Ferrario. Why does that matter? Because, well, we went back and looked at this earlier today, and I was going to do it last night, got home late, fell asleep in the middle of me looking it up.
I wouldn't have admitted that out loud, but yeah, hey, you did the research.
Yeah, I came home at 12:30 in the morning and looked this one up. No, but going back to 2017-2018 season, we did the threshold of being 500 or above. Back in that year, 24 teams that were at or above 500, and all of those teams made the playoffs. There was only one team that was below 500 that made the playoffs. 2018-2019, 24 teams made the playoffs, or 24 teams were above 500 or at 500, and only one team that was below that threshold made the playoffs, and that team was the Blues that won the Stanley Cup. But the part that was really striking to me was 2 years ago, there were 24 teams at or above 500. And all of those teams were in position to make the playoffs. So 0 teams that were below that threshold made the playoffs.
Yeah.
Last season, 22 teams were at that point. 500 or above, 0 teams below that threshold made the playoffs. You're sitting in a field now of 17 other teams that are putting themselves in a position to be in the playoffs, which, one, tells you where the NHL is at right now, but 2, if trends are going in the direction that you're seeing, if you're at or above 500, you have a very good opportunity in front of you to make the postseason, because teams that are below that threshold, you could pretty much write it in stone. They're not going to be a playoff team.
Yeah, if you're below the 500 mark, seems like you're probably out of it. Blues above 500. And though in some of those scenarios you said like 22 or 24 teams, yeah, there are a couple that won't make the playoffs. But, hey, they knew at the end of November they had a fighting chance, Right. And that's where the Blues are right now. And if you would have told me at the beginning of the year that come December 1st, well, we're here at Centene Community Ice Center, we'd be talking about a team 3 games above 500 that's in a playoff picture, I would have said, okay, yeah, I guess that could happen. But I would have been skeptical. And you know what? To the Blues' credit, they're playing this new system. The system has worked. Offensively, they've had some struggles this year, but they're getting great goaltending, and they're above the 500 mark. Like, they continue to fall into these trends. We talked about, I think it was either earlier this week or it was last week. Well, it had to be this week because Thanksgiving was last week, where, the teams that are in the playoff picture come Thanksgiving, I think it is over the last handful of years, it's like 7 of the 8 or 15 of the 16 end up making the playoffs that are in the playoff picture at the Thanksgiving break. Okay, well, that's one trend. The the Blues were in that category. Yep. All right, the next trend that we just looked at, if you are above 500, or if you're below 500, most of those teams miss the playoffs. Guess what? The Blues are not below 500 at the end of November. So these are some trends that the Blues are kind of keeping the status quo with, making sure that they're in these. And maybe they do end up falling out of the playoffs. We'll see how things play out this season. But right now, I would say they're definitely staying with the pack, staying with the pace that you need to be at to be a playoff team so far.
And to put this into perspective, last season at this time, the Blues were 11-11, so they were at 500, and of course didn't make the playoffs. They were averaging 2.8 goals per game, and they were averaging 3.55 goals allowed per game. At this point this season, 3 goals per game is what they're averaging, so better than what they were last year, and nearly half a goal better than what they were in goals allowed last season. So all areas significantly improved than what it was for the last couple of years. Also, your penalty kill is sitting at 80.4%. It was 69% last season.
Where's that at in the NHL? That
80.4%?
I was saying, because they were like, 15th when we looked the other day, so I'm assuming it's probably
15th right now. Yeah. But you were one of the worst penalty kills in the league last year with a 500 record.
And though your power play has not been able to be has been bad. It's just been bad. It hasn't been what can either help put a game away for the Blues or help them come back in a game. At least the penalty kill is doing that opposite effect for other teams. The Blues penalty kill, though it's not near the top half of the league, it's 15th. And honestly, for me, the Blues PK is being hammered down by like 3 bad games. I think for the most part they've been pretty good. There's a couple games that stand out where they were bad, like that Arizona loss early in the year. The PK is doing a pretty good job to where it is doing that opposite effect of, okay, you're going on a power play, dude, last year this team went on the penalty kill and was like, oh, crap, the game's out of reach. They're going to give up that goal and go down 3-0. Not so much this year.
Well, what's crazy about it, too, is the bottom 10 teams in the National Hockey League in terms of power play percentage, 5 of them have terrible power plays, and they're above 500. So Washington has the worst power play in the National Hockey League, and they're 6 games above 500. The Blues are 3 games above 500. Calgary is sitting at 500 and has the fourth worst power play in the National Hockey League, and Philadelphia is a game above 500, as well as Pittsburgh, also bad power play. So it could be done. You're putting yourself in a really good position to succeed being at or above 500. The other issue with this, and the reason that it's a good position, is because for some reason teams just stink in the National Hockey League this season. You sent the text earlier today that basically said at this point there are 18 teams that are at or above 500, which means there are 14 teams sitting below 500, where, again, last year there were 10 in that spot. 2 years ago there were 8. 4 years ago there were 8. 5 years ago there were 8. Having 14 teams that are below 500 is another reason why so many teams, one, feel optimistic that they can be a playoff team because it's an underwhelming start. But 2, it's the reason that even the Blues being so bad keeps them in a position where they're 5 points away from being a top 3 team.
Yeah, it's like like if you could have drawn up the most ideal year to start a retool, this is the year to do it if you're the Blues, because they do truly want to be a playoff team. The Blues are not on purpose trying to miss the playoffs. They want to get to the playoffs, but they're trying to do it with stopgaps in the lineup. Noah Vrana on a 1-year deal, Kapanen on a 1-year deal, Blaze, Sundqvist 1-year deals, defensive contracts that they wouldn't mind getting out of as soon as possible. So they're kind of in that spot where it is, we want to be a playoff team, but in most years I would think like the Blues, a team like them with 25 points, 568 point percentage, which is pretty good, they continue to play 500S hockey, where they're up and down, up and down, up and down. A team like that typically is not sitting as the number 1 wild card in the Western Conference. For whatever reason, the National Hockey League has, I think the thing that's happening in the NHL this year are you're seeing a bunch of teams going through transition, like we've talked about, the Pittsburgh Penguins, the Capitals, who had older talent in Ovechkin, Crosby, that are trying to transition into trying to win with the older talent, also bringing in a new wave of talent, kind of the same as what the Blues are trying to do. Excuse me.
You getting worked up?
I am getting worked up.
My goodness.
You've also got the teams that are really trying to rebuild, but then you've also got a couple of teams that are just clearly much better across the board. Colorado, Vegas, Vancouver, L.A. It is a very top-heavy National Hockey League compared to in recent years where there's 1, 2 teams that are there. Like last year, there were, just 3 teams, you'd say, that were, top tier. This year there's 5, 6, and then there's a big old clog in the middle, and then there's just the bottom tier teams.
What's wild about it, too, is if you kind of look at some of these teams that are above 500, like Detroit I can understand because their offense is just the best in the National Hockey League right now. But Arizona being above 500 team, you've got Philadelphia being an above 500 team. Calgary and Nashville are at 500. But then you look at Buffalo, who was expected to be a playoff team, below 500. Seattle and Edmonton and Minnesota all below 500. There will be some changing of the guard, which will kind of change this statistic this season, unless things just kind of stay on trend. But it's a wide open NHL early portion of the season, which is setting up the month of December to be very dire for this Blues team to get that structure back, because you play, I think, 8 of the 14 games in the month of December against Western Conference teams. So, you've had success against the East. You've struggled against the West in the first 2 months. That's got to change, because if you fall behind in the Western Conference games, specifically the Central, in December, you're going to be looking up after the year.
And as you're saying that, it popped in my head. If you can go on a winning streak here, and look, I'm not saying hey, they have to win. They got to go on a 5-game winning streak in the month of December. But if you get hot in December, the offense clicks, the structure gets going, man, you may be able to separate yourself for the season, And I'm not saying climb into the top 3, but with this muddy middle that is the Western Conference, man, you go on a 6-game win streak, you may be up. You may look back in the rearview mirror and be 8 points up on that team that's sitting on the outside looking in.
You might have to go on that winning streak, because Minnesota's now won back-to-back games. Nashville just snapped their 6-game winning streak. If Arizona's in the midst of a 3-game winning streak, if you want to be a playoff team talking in 2024, once we hit January, you're going to have to put some type of run together, because some of these other teams are. Washington, one of the worst teams in the NHL in terms of power play, they just put together a string of hockey games. That'll be an area that they'll have to focus on once they open up the month of December, which will be tomorrow night against the Arizona Coyotes. We'll rewind it with Jake Neighbours coming up in 15. But coming up next, you send us 4 scenarios. We'll tell you which one has to go. One's got to go to wrap up the work week here on BK and Ferrario. Comes your way next on 101 ESPN.
Grant Francis here with a SportsCenter update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Blues pick up another win over the Eastern Conference last night, 6-4 over the Buffalo Sabres. They're now 5-0 against Eastern Conference teams this season. Jake Neighbours and Braden Shin led the way, 2 goals each from them. Blues are now 12-9-1 with 25 points on the season, 4th in the Central Division, just 1 point behind the 3rd place Winnipeg Jets. But the Arizona Coyotes are just 1 point behind the Blues, and they'll be back at it tomorrow night in Arizona to take on the Coyotes. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 7 o'clock here on 101 ESPN. Puck drop at 8 o'clock. And then tonight on 101 ESPN, we'll have some college football for you. Pac-12 championship between Oregon and Washington. That pregame coming up right after the Fast Lane at 6 o'clock. I'm Grant Francis. The SportsCenter update's been driven by Johnny Londoff. Find new roads and shop 24/7 at londoff.com and londoffautoplex.com. Are you kidding me?
Count that big pen.
Time for our favorite segment of the week. Alongside Tanner Hendrickson and Graham Francis, I'm Alex Ferrario. It is BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN at the Centene Community Ice Center from our E&B Granite Studios. You send us 4 scenarios. We'll tell you which one's got to get up on out of there. It is one's got to go. 314-399-9646. Let's start with this one, boys. Christmas decoration edition. Tinsel, Christmas lights, blow up, those blow up like items elves, in your front yard, or elf on the shelf.
This one's easy for me. It's tinsel.
Oh.
That gets all over the place.
Oh, yeah.
I like Christmas lights, like those can be annoying, like especially if you have the kind where like one light bulb goes out and they all go out. Like,
and putting them
terrible.
up. Yikes.
Yeah, putting them up are bad. Like the blow-ups, I've never even dealt with those. So, like I don't even know. Maybe that is a massive hassle. Elf on the shelf, like that's a fun thing for kids. So like, why would I want to get rid of that? I'm definitely getting rid of the tinsel. We have that back at in my hometown. Oh, that stuff's all over the house. I hate it. It's stuck to you. Oh, it's the worst.
Grant?
It depends on what aspect you're looking at it from. I think if you're looking at it from the way it looks aspect, I think the blow-ups have to go. But if you're looking at it from a which one is most difficult to put up, I'd say the Christmas lights probably have to go because... Gosh, putting those up around the house is just, it's a project, that's for sure. And you got to deal with the weather, all that stuff. It's just not ideal.
Yeah, the lights suck putting up, but it's got to be tinsel. I'm with Tanner here. This is, I mean, it's like freaking glitter. I tell my wife there's no glitter in the house because I can't stop finding it. Our Christmas tree has like the fake snow on it, and that's the glitter. And every year we put it up, I like tell her, I said, you have to put this up and then like talk to me when it's all clean because I can't look at all of the glitter on the ground.
So the only tree in my house where my parents live is just the tree up in the family room upstairs. I will go downstairs and there's tinsel downstairs. How did it get there?
It's like those party poppers that you do on New Year's Eve and you find like pieces of string of it. It's like, oh my gosh. All right, one's got to go from the 314. One's got to go buffet edition. Chinese buffet, pizza buffet, breakfast buffet, or just a traditional buffet?
This one's easy for me. It's just because I'm not a fan of this style of food. It's the Chinese buffet.
Really?
I'm with you.
Yeah,
really?
I'm not a big Chinese fan. So I would definitely say the Chinese buffet's got to go.
I would have gotten rid of the breakfast buffet here because I've never been to a breakfast buffet that's good. It's either all dried out under the lights. You get the eggs that are the powdered eggs that, taste kind of like plastic. The French toast that they have or the waffles is all dried out. The bacon is typically the best part, but if you don't cook the bacon long enough, it's not crispy. The breakfast buffet is always underwhelming. I like me a good Chinese buffet, although It's like the same 3 or 4 things I put on my plate, but it's endless. Love a pizza buffet. I used to dominate a CC's Pizza back in high school. And the traditional buffet is the best of all of these. But, yeah, the breakfast buffet is going to have to go for me on
See,
this.
Alex, for me, like, whenever I go to a hotel, I look forward to the breakfast buffet in the morning.
Really?
If it's provided, yes.
Oh, yeah. See, I always feel like it's underwhelming because it's never – it all tastes so like – been there, done that. You know, like at least the other ones, they keep it fresh. When the breakfast, like they put it out and it stays out until it's all gone, which means it's all going to be dried out.
That's every buffet, though.
Not really. If you go to a good buffet, they keep the stuff flowing a little bit.
I guess.
Come on, man. All right, one's got to go burger toppings edition. Cheese, bacon, caramelized onions, or a fried egg.
I'd get rid of the fried egg. I just don't want, like, a breakfast thing on my burger. I'm not that big on caramelized onions.
So crazy.
I can do a little bit of caramelized onions, not a whole lot. You got to have the bacon, and you got to have the cheese. I don't know. I've never been like, oh, I need to have a fried egg on my burger. I'm just not that guy.
Yeah, see, this is the thing. Like, the fried egg is mandatory on the burger. It's like the perfect topping. I don't know which one I can get rid of here. I think I would just get rid of the caramelized onions because I'll just take the normal onions if I can have my fried egg. Bacon and cheese got to be there. But, man, you're telling me there's nothing better than biting into that burger and the yolk just leaking onto the burger.
No, that's the part that I can't stand. It makes my skin want to crawl. I love caramelized onions. I don't really care for just raw onions. Cheese is a mainstay, and then bacon obviously is staying as well. So, yeah, it's the fried egg for me.
Oh, man, I think I might go home and make a burger and put a fried egg on that bad boy. One's got to go championship run edition. So the one you're getting rid of, you don't see. The Blues Cup, Cards World Series, College Football Championship, or a March Madness Championship. And we'll just put Mizzou in Illinois or Hofstra if you'd like to, Grant.
Not going to happen.
This one's pretty easy for me. It would be the College Football Championship.
Because it's unrealistic?
Well, no. Well, that absolutely for Illinois, not for Mizzou. They're great. I don't feel like that field is difficult to get through like a March Madness one is. Like, Cards and Blues are pretty obvious. Those are staying. But to be able to win March Madness, I mean, you're talking to go through like the gauntlet of a schedule, whereas I know that the teams are tough you got to go through, but we're talking about like what? 1 victory, 2 victories, and you're there because of the committee that puts you in place?
See, I would actually get rid of like a Illinois or Mizzou college football playoff championship run because I think March Madness is tougher to get through. And the reason I think that's
what I'm saying. So you'd get rid of the college football championship run.
Yeah, because I think that one all of these would be special. Like, I'm not trying to say it wouldn't be, but I mean, there's a lot of luck that's involved of surviving a tournament of 64. Like, you need to get past a team that probably pushes you towards an upset, as Mizzou has seen by 2-15 seeds in recent memory. You also need maybe a little bit of luck where the one gets knocked out early. And then you also have to, like, if you need to shoot the ball well in every single game. In a college football playoff scenario, like, yeah, you win 3 games. I don't know. For me, it's just the college football playoff one is not easier, but there's less teams, not as much of, man, you really have to survive that school that you overlook that's going to come in. You know all the teams you're playing are really good. So I don't know why. I would say college football playoff.
Grant would get rid of the Blues Stanley Cup because he wants to see Hofstra win both.
Wow.
God.
You guys have a football team?
Used to. We used to. We don't anymore.
They were so bad they had to move them.
Yeah, they weren't great. But you know what? Hypothetically, my version of Hofstra that has a football team, I would get rid of the March Madness run. And it's just because I'm not really into basketball all that much. So I think they do a great job with March Madness, the format of it and everything, all the upsets. But basketball is just not really my thing, so I think I'd get rid of that.
All right, let's do 2 more here. One's got to go chore edition. Doing laundry, which means folding and putting away. Doing the dishes by hand or cleaning the bathroom?
There's probably unpopular opinion, if there is such a one for this. For me,
all of them are justified.
For me, it's doing laundry, and it's not even doing clothes. It's freaking bed sheets. I hate those. I cannot fold them. Oh, I hate it. It's my worst nightmare. I wish I could get a robot to fold them.
Grant?
You know, I think I'm with you, T-Bone. I feel like every time I do laundry, like when I'm done, I'm just pissed off. Like I hate doing it so much.
Right.
Like if I'm cleaning the bathroom, once I'm done, like I feel accomplished. Like it's something that you don't have to do for a little while because, like, unless you're
100%.
trashing your bathroom all the time, like you don't have to clean the bathroom all that much. But laundry is like an every week thing. So yeah, I'm getting rid of laundry.
And it's even worse when you don't have a washer or dryer in your house or apartment. When I have to drive somewhere, and in December when it's cold at night, no thanks.
See, that's why I've learned to live with the chaos that is the laundry. Like, we do the laundry, and then we just put it in a pile on our floor, and we just dig through it.
Well, see, you're not doing half of the process here.
Yeah, I know.
So,
well, I am.
Not
I'm
fair.
doing the laundry. I just don't have to drive to a laundry.
You got to fold it and put it away.
No, I don't need to do that.
Well, see, that's what I'm saying. You're only doing half of the process.
The proper answer here is cleaning the bathroom. There is nothing worse than having to go into the bathroom and cleaning off somebody else's, for lack of a better word, crap. There is nothing worse than you having to do that. That will make you feel as small as possible to have to do that.
Okay, here's the thing, though. At home, if you have an experience that leads you to believe that might have happened, you should clean it up yourself.
What do you mean?
Okay, on the toilet, if you, you know,
well, that's what I'm saying.
You should check and make sure before you make someone else clean it.
Well, absolutely, but not a lot of the time you're not cleaning your own. You're cleaning somebody else's, like a guest that comes over to your house.
That's fair, I guess.
And that's nasty.
At an old restaurant I used to work at, I had to do that. That might actually overtake the laundry.
Okay. Now, if I had worked like a restaurant or whatever industry where I had to go clean the public bathroom for all the employees there, this would go. I was assuming just my house.
When someone I've had that asked too before, and it's like, that's not happening. So that's our One's Gotta Go segment. Graham Francis, Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Alex Ferrario. We'll come back and rewind it next here on 101 ESPN. time here on BK and Ferrario as we rewind it, headed into the weekend. If you missed anything from the show today, you can check it out on our podcast page, 101ESPN.com, presented by Dobbs Tire and Auto Center. There's a lot of fun conversations talking about the Cardinals, finding that consistency, what they're going to be looking for at the winter meetings. We got into the Blues, including the month of November, Jordan Binnington, and we talked Jake Neighbours. And that's where I want to rewind it today, boys, because Jake Neighbours is having his coming out party in really only his second full season in the NHL. Last year was considered a full season, although half of it was spent in the American Hockey League. He's not considered a rookie, but right now he's got 9 goals, which is top 50 in the National Hockey League. He's got one of the best shooting percentages in the National Hockey League. All of that is great, but the part that I think is monumental for this Blues team moving forward out of this retool is that they've established a young power forward in the NHL. And these things really do seem like they're unicorns in today's game. I mean, when you think of the best power forwards, of course you think of the Tkachuk brothers, you think of Tom Wilson, you think of, why am I completely blanking on his name? Oh, Gabriel Landeskog with the Colorado Avalanche. You think of Pat Maroon. But you don't think of a lot of guys that are just entering the league as power forwards. And the reason I'm labeling him that is NHL Edge, and JR tweeted this out on JP Rutherford on Twitter. He tweeted out the picture off of NHL Edge that I looked at. Now, he interpreted it as 7 goals kind of in that power forward crease area. I added the other 2 because they were breakaways and they were shot right on the faceoff dot. But regardless, 7 or 9, all of his goals have come in the area that the Blues label in the house, which is right around the goaltender. It's the high danger zone area. You can find shooters. You can find playmakers. It is hard to find young guys who are willing to take the beating and be a power forward. And Jake Neighbours has established himself as one of the young guys who's willing to do that on a consistent basis.
Yeah, and you mentioned it being like a unicorn. It is tough to get guys to be like that, play that style of hockey. Why? Because it sucks. It's going to the front of the net where there's a bunch of tree trunks wanting to cross-check you and prevent you from getting there. But some guys have to do it. And you can make a great living in the NHL by doing so. And I said this earlier, and I think it's true. Man, I think if Craig Berube went into a laboratory to make a hockey player, he'd probably make Jake Neighbours, because you always need somebody that's going to go to those dirty areas, be willing to go get those rebounds, because it's tough to score from the outside. Man, NHL goalies are too good. You have to have a wicked wrist shot or an incredible one-timer. And as we've seen, having an incredible one-timer, there's not that many guys that have that as well in the National Hockey League. So it is a good thing that Jake Neighbours is not just molding into being a power forward, but molding into a guy that's going to go score goals for the Blues. You know, if he was just kind of a 10, 15-goal guy, like, okay, that's a really good thing. Like, you need those guys on the 3rd and 4th line. He's looking like he could be more like a 20, 25, maybe 30 on a really good year. He's really starting to raise the ceiling as to what I think expectations are going to be for him, not just this year, but in years to come as a St. Louis Blue.
Well, and it benefits this team massively, too, to have him at the top playing this well with Robert Thomas. You're talking about a top 6 winger that the Blues have been really searching for. But on top of it, you're also looking at a guy that's got the responsibility factor as well. Late in the game last night, up by 2, Craig Berube and the staff opted to put Jake Neighbours on the ice late in that game over a Jordan Kyrou. That's massive respect for a young player to get that type of responsibility. So they'll be back at it. We'll see what Jake Neighbours looks like tomorrow night. The Blues will take on the Arizona Coyotes. It'll be an 8 o'clock puck drop. I've got your First Community Credit Union pregame starting at 7 o'clock. Great job by Grant Francis helping us out while BK is out. Of course, for Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Alex Ferrario. Thank you so much for with us on our YouTube channel at 101 ESPN STL, brought to you by the Air Alliance team, to E&B Granite Studios here at Centene Community Ice Center. We'll talk to you on Monday. The Fast Lane coming up next here on 101 ESPN.